Have you ever found yourself paused in the middle of your day, perhaps stuck in the unmoving river of traffic, the symphony of horns playing a familiar, grating tune? Your phone, resting beside you, flashes with life, a constant stream of notifications, emails, and reminders of things you have yet to do, of places you need to be. In that moment, a quiet but heavy wave of anxiety washes over you, a feeling not of panic, but of a deep, persistent weariness. A sense that your life has become an endless marathon, a relentless pursuit of a finish line that seems to move further away the faster you run. You might ask yourself, in a whisper that is lost in the noise, is there another way to live? Is there a single, genuine moment of peace to be found in all of this? This feeling, this quiet ache of the soul, is not yours alone. It is the subtle, unspoken ailment of our modern age. We are born into a world that teaches us, from our very first steps, to look for happiness outside of ourselves. It is promised to us in the next promotion, the newer car, the larger house, the approval in the eyes of others. We are conditioned to believe that contentment is a prize to be won, an acquisition to be made. And so we chase, we strive, we accumulate, building our lives like elaborate structures, only to find ourselves standing in the highest room, feeling strangely empty, strangely alone. The more we seek, the more the feeling of being lost intensifies. We are like thirsty travelers, digging for water in a desert of mirages, never realizing that we are searching in a place where water can never be found. But there is another path, an ancient wisdom that whispers a truth so simple, yet so profound, that it can be easily missed. It suggests that peace, true peace, or anlak, as it is known in a tradition from the East, is not a distant destination to be conquered. It is not something to be achieved or earned. It is, instead, a reality that already exists within the deepest core of our being, a hidden spring of tranquility, waiting to be uncovered. This is the wisdom of Zen, not as a complex religion with rigid rules, but as a practical art of living. It offers not another thing to add to our already burdened lives, but a way to gently remove the layers of dust, the clouds of confusion that obscure the brilliant, peaceful, true nature that has been with us all along. It is a path that does not lead outward, but inward. It is the journey of coming home. The noise of the world, the traffic, the constant digital chime, is but a faint echo of a much louder, more relentless clamor. This true source of our disquiet does not come from outside. It is the storm that rages within the private universe of our own mind. To begin this journey towards peace, we must first turn our attention away from the external world and have the courage to listen, truly listen, to the symphony of our own inner chaos. This is the first, most crucial step, to recognize that the enemy of our tranquility is not our job, our relationships, or our circumstances, but the ceaseless, churning noise of our own thoughts. In the ancient traditions of the East, this state of mind is sometimes called tam vien ima, the monkey mind. It is a metaphor of breathtaking accuracy. Imagine a monkey, restless and agitated, trapped in a room full of windows. It leaps from one window to the next without a moment's pause. First, it leaps to the window of the past, replaying an awkward conversation from yesterday, feeling the sting of embarrassment all over again. Then, before that feeling can even settle, it springs to the window of the future, imagining a dozen catastrophic scenarios for a meeting that is weeks away, generating anxiety for an event that has not happened and may never happen. In the next instant, it jumps to a window of judgment, criticizing the way a stranger is dressed or the way we ourselves are sitting. It then ricochets to a random memory from childhood, a snatch of a song, a flicker of an old resentment. This is the nature of the untrained mind. It is a relentless, scattered, and exhausting dance. And for most of us, this dance is happening every moment of our waking lives. We often mistake this inner monologue for ourselves. We believe that I am the one who is worrying, I am the one who is regretting, I am the one who is judging. But the wisdom of this path asks us to consider a radical possibility, that this voice is not the essence of who we are. It is a conditioned mechanism, a biological inheritance. Our ancestors survived because their minds were wired to constantly scan for threats, to replay mistakes in order to avoid them in the future, and to worry about securing the next meal. In a world of predators and scarcity, this monkey mind was a survival tool. But today, We live in a world where the predators are emails, deadlines, and social media posts. The mechanism remains the same, but the context has changed, turning a survival tool into a source of chronic, low-grade suffering. The mind still scans for threats, but now the threats are everywhere, and they are perpetual. This constant, frantic activity is not a sign of productive thinking. It is the mind simply doing what it has been programmed to do, running on an endless loop of habit, unchecked and unobserved. The real suffering, however, comes not just from the noise itself, but from what the noise creates: stories. There is a profound difference between the raw data of an event and the narrative our mind weaves around it. An event is neutral. A story is loaded with emotion, judgment, and personal history. For example, the event is another car pulls into the space you were waiting for. It is a simple fact. But the story the monkey mind begins to chatter is anything but simple. Can you believe the nerve of that person? They did that on purpose. People are so selfish and rude. This always happens to me. I have the worst luck. Now my entire day is ruined. I can't even get a simple parking spot. The initial, fleeting event is gone in an instant, but the story can linger for hours, or even days, poisoning our mood, tensing our body, and dictating our interactions with others. We are no longer responding to reality. We are responding to the fiction our mind has produced. These stories are not born from nothing. They are constructed from the raw materials of our past, our upbringing, our wounds, our fears, our insecurities. The story about the parking spot isn't really about the parking spot. It might be rooted in a deeper feeling of not being seen, of being taken advantage of the world being an unfair place. The mind, in its frantic attempt to make sense of the world, slaps these old, painful labels onto new, neutral events. We suffer not because of what happens to us, but because of the lens through which we view what happens to us. And this lens, this filter, is made of pure, unadulterated mental noise. There is a tremendous cost to living this way. Your mental and spiritual energy is a finite, precious resource. Imagine your mind as a powerful computer. When the monkey mind is in charge, it is like having hundreds of demanding programs running simultaneously, all day long. One program is constantly analyzing past conversations. Another is running endless simulations of future disasters. A third is dedicated to comparing your life to the curated highlight reels you see on social media. A fourth is just a constant feed of self-criticism. Is it any wonder that we feel so exhausted? This is not a creative, life-affirming exhaustion that comes from meaningful work or deep connection. It is a draining, soul-crushing depletion that comes from the friction of our own thoughts. This inner noise is the ultimate parasite, feeding on our peace, our presence, and our vitality, leaving us feeling burnt out, disconnected, and unable to appreciate the simple goodness that may be right in front of us. Ultimately, this constant internal chatter creates a veil, a thick fog between our consciousness and the world. We cease to experience life directly. We experience our commentary about life. You sit down to drink a cup of tea. The direct experience is the warmth of the cup in your hands, the subtle aroma, the taste of the liquid on your tongue. But the mind's noise creates a filter. This tea is okay, but not as good as the one I had last week. I should have used less sugar. I have so much to do after this. I wonder what that person thinks of me. The tea is gone, and you never even tasted it. We walk through a park, but we don't see the light filtering through the leaves or feel the breeze on our skin. Instead, we are lost in a maze of thoughts about work, about bills, about a past argument. We are physically present, but spiritually, we are absent. We become ghosts in our own lives, haunted by the past and anxious about the future, completely missing the only thing that is ever real, the present moment. There is a story of a man who was deeply troubled by the noise of the world. He believed that if he could only find a place of perfect silence, he would find peace. He left his bustling village and journeyed to a dense forest. But as he sat, he was disturbed by the chattering of birds and the rustling of leaves in the wind. This was not silent enough. He then traveled to the highest, most desolate mountain peak. But there, he was tormented by the howling of the wind. Still not enough silence. Finally, he found a deep, dark cave, miles from any civilization. He entered and sat in the profound darkness. For a moment, there was a semblance of quiet, but then he began to hear a soft, rhythmic thumping. It was the sound of his own heartbeat. He heard the gentle, airy whisper of his own breath, and louder than all of it, he heard the cacophony of his own thoughts, his worries, his plans, his judgments, which had followed him from the village to the forest, to the mountain, and into the very heart of the cave. In his despair, he understood. The noise he was trying to escape was not in the world, it was inside of him. Defeated, he returned to his village. He walked into the center of the busiest marketplace, a whirlwind of sounds, smells, and sights. He sat down on a simple wooden bench, closed his eyes, and for the first time, he did not try to block the noise out. He simply let it be. He allowed the sounds of the vendors, the bartering, the children's laughter to wash over him without resistance. And then he turned his attention inward to the familiar chaos of his monkey mind. But this time, he did something different. He didn't engage with the thoughts. He didn't fight them. He didn't follow them down their rabbit holes. He simply watched them, as one might watch clouds drift across the sky. He observed the arising of a worry, and he watched it pass. He observed the arising of a judgment, and he watched it dissolve. In this simple, non-judgmental observation, a miracle occurred. The inner chatter, no longer being fed by his attention and resistance, began to quiet down. A space opened up between his thoughts. And in that space, right there, in the heart of the noisy marketplace, he discovered a profound, unshakable silence. He had finally found what he was looking for, not by changing his environment, but by changing his relationship to his own mind. This is the first gate we must pass through on this journey, to recognize the noise, not as a personal failing, but as an impersonal, conditioned process of the mind, to see, with clarity and without judgment, how this inner symphony of disquiet is the true architect of our stress and dissatisfaction. Now that we have identified this conductor of our inner chaos, we must ask a crucial question. What is the fuel that keeps this frantic orchestra playing? The answer often lies in a deeply held, almost unconscious belief. The belief that our peace, our contentment, our enoughness is something that must be found out there, in the relentless, exhausting pursuit of more. If the inner noise is the music of our discontent, then the belief in more is the composer of the symphony. Our culture, with its vibrant billboards and endlessly scrolling screens, whispers a single, seductive promise. Happiness is just one acquisition away. It tells us that the feeling of unease, the subtle anxiety that hums beneath the surface of our days, can be silenced. The cure, we are told, is not found within, but lies waiting on a store shelf, in a bank account, or in the admiring eyes of our peers. If only you had the newer phone, you would feel connected. If only you had the bigger house, you would feel secure. If only you achieved that next promotion, you would finally feel worthy. Peace becomes a commodity, a destination on a map of material success, and so we believe it. We pour our life's precious energy into this chase, convinced that contentment is something to be earned, built, and owned. This relentless pursuit is built upon a psychological phenomenon known as the hedonic treadmill. It is a perfect metaphor for the futility of seeking lasting happiness through external means. Imagine yourself on a treadmill. You begin to run, putting in tremendous effort, your heart pounding, your breath shortening. You are moving, you are sweating, you are striving. Yet, for all your effort, your fundamental position does not change. You remain in the exact same spot. This is the precise nature of the chase for material happiness. We begin with a desire. The mind isolates an object or a status and projects all of its hopes for peace onto it. The desire creates a tension, a feeling of lack, which we mistake for unhappiness. We then work tirelessly to acquire the object of our desire. The day we finally achieve it, there is a rush of pleasure, a wave of relief. The tension is gone. I've made it, we think. This is it. But then, something quiet and insidious happens. Adaptation. The novelty wears off. The thrill fades. The new car, once a symbol of success and a source of daily excitement, simply becomes the vehicle that takes you to work. The larger house, once a spacious palace, becomes just a collection of rooms that need cleaning. The feeling of special evaporates and is replaced by the new normal. The baseline of our expectations has shifted upward. The brief pleasure is gone, and the underlying hum of discontent returns, sometimes even stronger than before. The mind, addicted to the rush of acquisition, immediately begins to scan the horizon for a new target. The treadmill speeds up. The chase begins anew. This cycle is the engine of consumer society, a self-perpetuating loop of desire, acquisition, and disappointment, guaranteeing that we are always striving and never arriving. We are not running towards happiness. We are simply running away from our present dissatisfaction, a race we can never truly win. This treadmill is supercharged by one of the most toxic habits of the modern mind: social comparison. We no longer measure our sense of enough by our own genuine needs or comfort. Instead, we measure it against a constantly moving, digitally curated goalpost held by others. We look at the vacation photos of a friend, the new home of a colleague, the seemingly effortless success of a stranger on the internet, and a familiar, painful thought arises: my life is not as good as theirs. We are comparing our own raw, unedited, behind-the-scenes reality, with all its messiness and insecurities, to the perfectly framed, filtered, and captioned highlight reel of someone else's life. It is a rigged game, a contest designed for us to lose, and yet we play it compulsively, scrolling through feeds that are tailor-made to make us feel inadequate. This constant comparison is a profound act of self-violence. With every jealous glance, with every envious thought, we are reinforcing a core belief that we are lacking, that we are not enough as we are. It fuels resentment, not just towards others, but towards ourselves and our own lives. We begin to see our blessings not as sources of gratitude, but as markers of how far we fall short of an imagined ideal. The joy of our own small apartment is poisoned by the image of someone else's mansion. The satisfaction of our own work is soured by the news of another's promotion. We are living in a state of self-inflicted poverty, not a poverty of resources, but a poverty of perspective, a scarcity of contentment, created entirely by the noise of comparison in our own minds. Buddhist wisdom has a name for this driving force: Trishna, a Sanskrit word that translates not just as desire, but as a deep, burning thirst or craving. The metaphor is precise and powerful. Imagine you are lost at sea, dying of thirst. In your delirium, you begin to drink the salt water. For a fleeting moment, the coolness of the water feels like relief, but the salt rapidly dehydrates your body, making your thirst 100 times more intense than before. To quench this new, agonizing thirst, you drink even more salt water, believing it to be the cure, when in fact it is the very essence of the poison. This is the nature of craving. Every time we indulge the belief that an external thing will bring us lasting peace, we are taking another drink of salt water. The new purchase, the social media like, the praise from another, they provide a momentary relief, but they strengthen the underlying mechanism of craving itself. The thirst for more becomes more deeply ingrained. Craving is a blind, impersonal energy. It does not care about your happiness. Its sole function is to perpetuate itself. It dangles an object before you, promising it holds the key to your release. But the moment you grasp it, the craving lets go of the object and simply finds a new one to fixate on. The problem was never the absence of the object. The problem was, and always is, the thirst itself. So, what is the antidote to this poison? The answer lies in a radical redefinition of wealth. Our world defines wealth as the infinite accumulation of things. The wisdom traditions define it as tri-tuk, or contentment, the simple, profound realization of enough. True wealth is not having everything you could possibly want. It is wanting and deeply appreciating what you already have. It is a shift from a mind of frantic lack to a heart of quiet sufficiency. This does not mean a rejection of comfort or an embrace of forced poverty. It is not about what you own or don't own. It is about severing the imaginary cord that connects your possessions to your self-worth. It is the liberation that dawns when you realize, in your bones, that your inner peace, your value as a human, and your capacity for joy are entirely independent of your financial statement. Contentment is the discovery of the immense wealth that is already ours. The simple miracle of a healthy body, the warmth of a genuine friendship, the silence of the early morning, the taste of clean water, It is a wealth that cannot be bought or sold, and therefore a wealth that can never be lost. There is a timeless story that illustrates this with beautiful simplicity. A wealthy industrialist, a man whose life was a frantic web of meetings, deadlines, and stress, went on vacation to a small coastal village. One morning, walking along the harbor, he saw a local fisherman relaxing beside his small, humble boat, smoking a pipe and smiling at the sea. He had just a few fish lying in a basket beside him. The industrialist, driven by his lifelong conditioning of optimization and growth, was disturbed by this sight. He approached the fisherman. "Why are you sitting here?" he asked. "You've only caught a few fish. If you stayed out longer, you could catch many more." The fisherman looked up, his eyes crinkling in a gentle smile, and asked, "And then what?" The industrialist, momentarily taken aback, launched into his pitch. "Well, you could sell the extra fish and save the money. Soon, you could afford a bigger boat, which would allow you to go into deeper waters and catch even more fish." "And then what?" the fisherman repeated, his voice calm. "Then," the industrialist said, growing excited, "you could buy nylon nets, hire a crew, buy a second boat, then a whole fleet. You would become a rich man, a millionaire. You could build your own cannery, control the product, the processing, the distribution. You would move to the city, run a massive corporation from a corner office." "And then what?" the fisherman asked a third time. The industrialist, reaching the grand finale of his vision, leaned in conspiratorially. "Then, my friend, when you are fabulously wealthy, you could finally retire. You could sell your company, move to a small coastal village, sleep in late, fish a little in the mornings, play with your grandchildren in the afternoon, and spend your evenings relaxing by the sea with your wife." The fisherman's smile widened. He took a slow puff from his pipe, gestured to the setting sun and the quiet waves, and said, "But isn't that what I am doing right now? This is the great trap of more. It sends us on a long, stressful, and convoluted detour, only to promise us a state of peace and simplicity that was already available to us, right here, right now, before we took the first step on the treadmill." This relentless pursuit of things is not only fueled by a deep misunderstanding of where happiness comes from, but it is also propped up by an even more fundamental illusion, an illusion that whispers to us that we are, or should be, the masters of our fate. It is the illusion that we can control the uncontrollable. Having seen the deceptive nature of the material chase, we must now turn our gaze to this subtle, yet powerful source of our anxiety, our desperate, futile attempt to command a universe that is, by its very nature, beautifully and irrevocably free. Beneath the frantic chase for more, and deeper even than the inner noise that fuels it, lies a fundamental assumption about the world and our place in it. It is an assumption so deeply ingrained we rarely think to question it. The belief that we are in control. We operate as if we are the chief architects of our lives, drawing up blueprints of how things should be, how our career should progress, how our relationships should unfold, how our day should go. We believe that through sheer force of will, meticulous planning, and relentless effort, we can build a life that is safe, predictable, and immune to the winds of chance and change. This deep-seated desire to command our existence is the hidden source of our most profound anxieties. For we have declared war on a fundamental law of the universe, a law as powerful and as pervasive as gravity itself. This is the law of impermanence. In the language of the Buddha, this is called anicca. It is the simple, observable, and inescapable truth that everything changes. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is fixed. The universe is not a static object, but a dynamic, flowing, endless process. Your body, right now, is not the same body it was 7 years ago. Its cells have been replaced. Your thoughts are like clouds, appearing from nowhere, lingering for a moment, and dissolving back into nothing. Your emotions are like the weather, a passing shower of sadness giving way to the sunlight of joy. The seasons turn, mountains erode, relationships evolve, civilizations rise and fall. To be alive is to be in a constant state of flux. Our culture often teaches us to fear this truth. Impermanence sounds like a pessimistic, even tragic, verdict on life. It means that good times will not last. It means we will lose what we love. It means our youth and health will inevitably fade. We see impermanence as the great thief, and so we resist it. We cling to pleasure, hoping to make it stay. We fight against aging with creams and potions. We grasp at relationships, terrified of them changing or ending. We build our lives like fortresses of sand, desperately trying to hold back the tide of reality. And this resistance, this fight against the fundamental nature of existence, is the very definition of suffering. But the wisdom of the path reveals that anicca is not a curse. It is a profound blessing. It is, in fact, a truth of immense liberation. Yes, the good times will pass, but this makes them all the more precious, inviting us to be fully present for them, instead of taking them for granted. And more importantly, the law of impermanence guarantees that the difficult times will also pass. Pain is not a life sentence. Grief is not a permanent address. Failure is not a final verdict. The anxiety you feel right now is not who you are. It is a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of your awareness. When we are stuck in the depths of despair, the truth of impermanence is a lifeline. It is the universe whispering to us, "This too shall pass." It is the promise of renewal, the guarantee that change is always possible. The suffering, then, does not come from the fact that things change. It comes from our insistence that they should not. Imagine you are standing in a powerful flowing river. The river is reality, its current is impermanence. You have a choice. You can spend all of your energy fighting the current, trying to stand perfectly still, bracing yourself against the ceaseless flow. You will become exhausted, battered, and filled with rage at the river for not behaving as you wish. Your struggle is immense, but your position never improves. This is resistance. This is arguing with reality. Alternatively, you can learn to work with the river. You can relax your body, turn to face downstream, and allow the current to carry you. You can learn to float, to swim, to use the river's own energy to navigate with grace and skill. You are still in the same river, but your experience of it is transformed from one of painful struggle to one of effortless movement. The river was never the problem was the fight. This is where we must understand the true meaning of acceptance. In our culture, acceptance often sounds like passive resignation, like giving up or condoning a negative situation. But in the context of this wisdom, acceptance is a courageous and intelligent act. It is not saying, "I like that this is happening." It is simply saying, "I see that this is happening." It is the conscious decision to stop arguing with what is. It is the dropping of the mental and emotional war against the present moment. Think of the immense energy that is liberated when you stop fighting. All the power you were using to fuel your anger, your denial, your shoulds and should nots, is suddenly freed up. This energy can now be used for a wise and compassionate response. You cannot solve a problem you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot heal a wound you pretend does not exist. Acceptance is the necessary first step. It is the pivot point that allows us to move from a state of blind, painful reaction to one of skillful, clear-eyed action. This entire struggle with control is rooted in the mind's obsession with the past and the future. We try to control the past by replaying it endlessly, drowning in regret and what-ifs. We try to control the future by spinning endless webs of worry and anxiety. Both are acts of utter futility. The past is a ghost, a collection of memory traces that no longer exists. The future is a phantom, a mental projection that has not yet been born. The only place life ever truly happens, the only place we have any real power, is in the present moment. The now is our only sanctuary from the tyranny of impermanence. By its very nature, the present moment is always here. It is the one constant in a universe of change. When we can let go of our grip on the past and our anxiety about the future, and allow our awareness to settle fully into the here and now, we discover a profound peace. We step out of the turbulent river of mental time and onto the solid ground of being. There is a classic Zen story that captures this beautifully. A certain Zen master, a man known for his deep calm, was crossing a lake in a small boat. He meditated as he rowed, his movements graceful and present. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat crashed into the side of his. A flash of intense anger rose in him. He thought, "Who is this clumsy fool who is not watching where they are going?" He opened his eyes, ready to shout, ready to unleash his frustration on the careless person who had disturbed his peace. But when he looked, he saw that the other boat was empty. It had simply come untied from its moorings on the shore and had been carried by the current into his path. In that single instant of seeing, his anger completely vanished. There was no one to blame. There was no one to be angry at. It was just an event, a mindless collision of wood against wood. He felt a sense of foolishness for the rage that had so quickly possessed him. He took a deep breath, pushed the empty boat away from his own, and continued on his journey. Later, reflecting on the incident, he had a profound insight. The bump from the boat was a neutral event. His anger was not caused by the bump itself, but by his immediate assumption that there was a blameworthy person inside it. He realized that all his anger, all his frustration with the world, arose in the same way. It was not caused by other people or external events, but by his own internal reactions, his own stories, his own expectations of how things should be. From that day forward, he made a vow. He would treat every boat as if it were empty. Every person who insulted him, every driver who cut him off, every plan that went awry, would see them all as empty boats, drifting on the great river of life. They were not personal attacks. They were simply neutral, impersonal events. This is how we learn to dance with impermanence. It is not about achieving a life where no empty boats ever bump into us. That is impossible. It is about training the mind to see that they are, in fact, all empty boats. Our peace is not dependent on a smooth and predictable journey. It is found in the wisdom of our response, in the letting go of our argument with the river, and in the profound freedom of no longer taking it all so personally. This deep acceptance of the world's endless flow, this release from the exhausting job of being the commander of the universe, naturally leads us to a more intimate and unsettling question. If everything is in flux of bodies, our thoughts, our world, then what is this I that we work so tirelessly to control and protect? Who, exactly, is the captain of this vessel? We are led, by the logic of our own investigation, to question the very existence of the phantom at the center of it all. Having seen that the world outside of us is a ceaseless, flowing river of impermanence, and that our attempts to control it are a primary source of our anxiety, we must now turn this powerful lens of inquiry inward. We must examine the very entity that seeks control, the one who feels the anxiety, the one who strives and suffers. We must investigate the captain of our ship, the presumed center of our universe, the self, the I. For our entire lives, we operate on the unquestioned assumption that there is a permanent, continuous me at the heart of our experience, a thinker behind the thoughts, a feeler behind the feelings, a stable entity that was born, that is living, and that will one day die. But the wisdom of this path asks us to do something radical. It asks us to stop assuming and to start looking. Let us begin this investigation with a simple question. Where is this I? When you say, I am happy, or I am hurt, who or what are you referring to? Is it your body? Let us look closely. This body is in a constant state of flux. It is not the same body that it was a decade ago, or even a year ago. Its cells are continuously dying and being replaced. It changes with age, with illness, with diet, with exercise. If you lose a limb, are you any less you? The body is a temporary vessel, a biological process. It is something we have, not something we are. So the permanent, unchanging ear cannot be found in the body. Well then, is the I our mind? Let us look there. What is the mind? Is it our thoughts? But thoughts are the most ephemeral things we know. They arise, unbidden, and disappear just as quickly. A thought about lunch is replaced by a memory of childhood, which is then replaced by a worry about tomorrow. They are like fireflies on a summer night, flickering in and out of existence. Our opinions change, our beliefs evolve, we learn and we forget. If you changed all of your opinions, would you cease to be you? Surely not. The I cannot be something as fleeting as a thought. Perhaps the I is our emotions. But emotions are even more volatile than thoughts. One moment we feel joy, the next, sadness. A wave of anger can rise and fall in a matter of minutes. To define ourselves by these passing weather patterns would be like a mountain defining itself by a single cloud. So the I is not our emotions. What then is left? Is it our name? A name is just a label, a sound given to us by others. Is it our job? That can be lost. Our roles as a parent, a child, a spouse, these are relationships, functions we perform, and they too evolve and change. When we search honestly and diligently for a solid, independent, unchanging I at the core of our being, we find that it is nowhere to be found. What we call the self is not a noun, but a verb. It is not a static entity, but a dynamic process, a constantly shifting constellation of body, sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and emotions. It is a story, woven together from the threads of memory and language, a story we tell ourselves and the world about who we are. The profound tragedy of human existence is that we spend the vast majority of our life energy engaged in the stressful, exhausting project of defending and polishing this imaginary construct. When someone insults us, what are they really insulting? A temporary arrangement of cells? A fleeting thought? A passing emotion? Yet the story of me feels under attack, and so we react with anger, defensiveness, and pain. When we fail at a task, the story of me as a competent, successful person is threatened, and so we feel shame, fear, and worthlessness. We live in a state of constant low-grade paranoia, guarding a phantom, terrified that this fragile idea of who we are might be tarnished or broken. It is a self-imposed prison. We are the warden, the guard, and the prisoner, all at once. The escape from this prison lies in a truth known as anatta, or no self. This is perhaps the most misunderstood and radical insight of the path. It does not mean that you do not exist. It is not a doctrine of annihilation. Look at your hand. It clearly exists. The pain you feel and the joy you experience are real experiences. Anatta simply means that you do not exist as a separate, permanent, isolated self. It means that the story of me is not the truth of your being. The liberating alternative is to shift your sense of identification. Instead of identifying with the contents of your experience, you learn to rest in the awareness of the experience. Imagine the sky. The sky is filled with all sorts of weather: brilliant sunshine, dark storm clouds, gentle rain, flashes of lightning. The clouds and the storms are our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. They are constantly appearing, changing, and disappearing. Most of us live our lives believing that we are the weather. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we say, "I am sad." When lightning of anger flashes, we say, "I am angry." We collapse our entire identity into that one, temporary, passing event. But the wisdom of anatta invites you to realize that you are not the weather. You are the sky. You are the vast, open, boundless awareness in which all the weather of your life unfolds. The sky is not harmed by the storm. It is not attached to the sunshine. It holds all of it, allows all of it to be, and remains, in its essential nature, untouched, spacious, and free. When you begin to make this shift, from identifying with the cloud to resting as the sky, a space opens up in your life. A thought of anxiety arises. Instead of the habitual reaction, "Oh no, I am anxious," a new possibility emerges. You can simply note, there is the feeling of anxiety. I see it. I feel its energy in my body. The anxiety is no longer me. It is a temporary event happening within me. It is a cloud passing through the sky of my awareness. By no longer identifying with it, you take away its power. You are not feeding it with the story of me and my anxiety problem. You are simply allowing it to be, and in that allowance, it naturally dissolves, its energy expended. This is the beginning of true freedom. The practical implications of this are life-altering. The fear of criticism, which holds so many of us hostage, begins to lose its grip. If someone criticizes you, what are they criticizing? A set of ideas you hold? Your appearance? Your actions? Since you understand that you are not these temporary phenomena, the criticism is no longer a wound to your core. It is simply information, feedback, another empty boat drifting by. You can look at it with curiosity, see if there is any truth in it you can learn from, and then let it go, without the deep, personal sting of shame. The terror of failure also begins to fade. Failure is no longer a final verdict on the worth of the self. It is simply an outcome, an experience. It is data. Without the heavy burden of having to protect the fragile ego of me, you become lighter, more playful, more creative. You are free to be authentic, to try new things, to live more boldly, because your fundamental being is no longer on the line with every action. There is a simple parable that illustrates this truth. A spiritual seeker wanted to understand the ultimate nature of the self. His teacher handed him an onion and said, "Find the essence of the onion." The seeker took the onion and began to peel it. He stripped away the dry, brown, papery outer skin and set it aside. This is just a protective shell, he thought, not the real onion. He then peeled off the first thick, white, pungent layer. This is certainly part of the onion, but is it the core, the essence? He continued, peeling away layer after layer. Each one was undeniably onion, yet none seemed to be the final, central truth he was looking for. He peeled through the larger outer layers to the smaller, more tender layers at the heart. His eyes began to water from the onion's potency. Finally, having peeled away the very last, tiny sliver of a layer, he found himself holding nothing at all. He looked at the large pile of layers on one side, and his empty hands on the other. There was no pit, no seed, no secret core to be found. In that moment of emptiness, he understood. The onion's true nature was not a hidden core. The onion was the totality of its layers. There was no onion separate from the layers that composed it. His teacher saw him and smiled. "So it is," the teacher said, "with the self. We are the layers. We are the ever-changing, interdependent processes of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and awareness. To search for a separate, permanent I at the center is a fool's errand. The freedom is not in finding a self, but in realizing there isn't one to be found. This understanding, that the self we so desperately try to protect is a construct, a beautiful, complex, but ultimately empty onion, is a pivotal insight. It leads us directly to the most fundamental question of this entire spiritual path. If suffering is experienced by this phantom self, what then is the true nature and origin of that suffering? To answer this, we must turn to the original diagnosis of the human condition, the very first of the Four Noble Truths articulated by the Buddha. Having journeyed through the noisy labyrinth of the mind, past the mirages of materialism, and beyond the illusion of a solid self, we arrive at the very bedrock of this ancient path. This deconstruction is not meant to leave us adrift in a meaningless void. It is a clearing of the ground, a necessary preparation for building a foundation of unshakable wisdom. This foundation is laid out in what are known as the Four Noble Truths. These are not commandments to be believed, nor are they articles of faith. They are best understood as the pragmatic, compassionate framework of a great physician. They represent a diagnosis of our condition, an identification of its cause, a prognosis that a cure is possible, and finally, a prescription for the treatment. We must begin where any healing begins, with a clear and honest diagnosis of the symptom. This is the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. The ancient Pali word dukkha is often translated into English simply as suffering. But this single word is too narrow, too heavy. It can conjure images only of intense agony or deep tragedy. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, its meaning is far broader, more subtle, and much more pervasive. A better translation might be unsatisfactoriness or a fundamental dis-ease. It is the inherent friction we feel in our lives. It is the low-grade, persistent feeling that things are not quite right. It is the gap between our expectations and reality. It is the stress of trying to hold on to things that are constantly changing. It is the subtle ache of incompleteness that hums beneath the surface of even our most pleasant moments. It is the anxiety of being a vulnerable, temporary being in an uncertain world. Dukkha is not just the overt pain of a wound. It is the background static of a life lived out of harmony with its own nature. To understand it more clearly, this truth is often broken down into three distinct types. The first is the most obvious, dukkha dukkha, the suffering of painful experience. This is the dukkha that everyone acknowledges without question. It is the pain of a migraine headache, the sting of a harsh word, the grief of losing a loved one. It is the pain of sickness, old age, and death. It is the stress of financial hardship, the fear of violence, the sorrow of a broken heart. This is the raw, undeniable pain of life's challenges, the sharp edges of existence that we all encounter. The second type is more subtle, viparinama, dukkha, the suffering produced by change. This form of dukkha arises from the truth of impermanence, which we have already explored. It is the anxiety woven into our happy moments. We finally get the promotion we have worked for, and for a while there is joy. But soon, a subtle fear creeps in, the fear of not living up to expectations, the pressure to perform, the anxiety of potentially losing the position. We have a perfect, joyful day with our family, and as the day ends, a quiet sadness emerges, a melancholy whisper that this moment is over and will never come again. The happiness itself becomes a source of suffering because we know it is fragile. We know it will not last. We cling to pleasure, trying to freeze it in time. And this very act of clinging, of resisting the natural flow of life, is itself a form of suffering. The sweetness of the experience is tinged with the bitterness of its inevitable end. The third and most profound type is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the deepest and most pervasive form of dissatisfaction, rooted in the very nature of being a constructed self. It is the background hum of insecurity that comes from being a temporary assembly of changing physical and mental parts. It is the existential unease of knowing that our well-being is constantly dependent on a multitude of external and internal conditions, almost all of which are outside of our ultimate control. It is the inherent unreliability of a life built on shifting sands. This is the suffering that remains even when we are not in physical pain and not clinging to a specific pleasure. It is the fundamental vulnerability and insecurity of the ego self, constantly striving to maintain its sense of solidity in a universe that is fluid and seamless. It is the vague, nagging feeling that no matter how good things get, something is still missing. To confront these truths can feel, at first, like a deeply pessimistic act. Our modern culture often encourages us to ignore or bypass these difficult realities, to think positive and focus only on the light. But this is like going to a physician with a serious illness and having the doctor tell you to simply ignore your symptoms. A good doctor does not do this. A good doctor looks closely, runs tests, and provides a clear, honest diagnosis, even if the news is difficult to hear. Why? Because an accurate diagnosis is the non-negotiable first step toward effective treatment. The Buddha is acting as that great physician for the human spirit. The acknowledgement of dukkha is not an embrace of negativity. It is an act of supreme courage and profound realism. It is turning on the light in a dark room to see what is actually there. You cannot begin to heal a condition that you refuse to admit exists. This shared experience of dukkha is the great equalizer. It is the common ground upon which all of humanity stands. The wealthiest person on earth feels the dukkha of change when their health fails. The most powerful leader feels the dukkha of painful experience when they are betrayed. Every single one of us, regardless of race, gender, culture, or creed, navigates this landscape of dissatisfaction. This shared vulnerability is not a cause for despair, but a wellspring of boundless compassion. When we truly understand that the person who has angered us is also driven by their own inner turmoil, their own fears, their own dukkha, it becomes incredibly difficult to maintain hatred. We see their actions not as a personal attack, but as a symptom of their own suffering. In this recognition, the walls of separation between self and other begin to dissolve. We realize we are all in this together, fellow travelers carrying similar burdens. There is a story that illustrates this with heartbreaking beauty. A young woman named Kisa Gautami lived in a village and had only one son, whom she adored above all else. One day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gautami was consumed by a grief so powerful it drove her mad. She refused to accept that her son was gone. She picked up his small, lifeless body and carried him through the village, going from door to door, begging for a medicine that could restore him. Some of her neighbors mocked her madness, others turned away in pity, unable to face her sorrow. Finally, a wise old man, seeing her desperation, suggested she go and see the Buddha. She rushed to him, laid the body of her son at his feet, and pleaded, "Can you give me a medicine to bring my son back?" The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and said, "I can help you, but first, you must do one thing. Go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died." Kisa Gautami's heart soared with hope. A single mustard seed. It was such a simple task. She hurried back to the village and knocked on the first door. "The Buddha has sent me," she said. "I need a mustard seed to cure my son, but I can only take it if no one in this house has ever died." The woman of the house replied sadly, "You may have as many seeds as you wish, but the living in this house are few, the dead are many. My husband died only last year. Kisa Gautami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Our daughter was taken from us. We lost our parents. Our infant child did not survive. She went to every single home, from the richest mansion to the poorest hut, and could not find a single household untouched by death. As evening fell, she sat by the side of the road, exhausted. She watched the flickering lights of the village lamps being lit, only to see them extinguished one by one into the darkness. In that moment, a profound realization dawned in her heart. Her own, personal, unbearable sorrow was not unique. It was the shared, universal condition of all beings. Death was not a special punishment visited upon her. It was a law of life. With this insight, the frantic, desperate clinging in her heart began to release. Her grief did not disappear, but it was transformed from an isolating agony into a deep, compassionate understanding. She had found the medicine, not for her son, but for herself. This is the first noble truth. It is the courageous recognition that our conditioned existence is marked by a fundamental dissatisfaction. This is not a final judgment. It is not the end of the path. It is the starting point. It is the necessary, honest, and compassionate diagnosis that clears the way for healing. And like any good physician, having identified the symptom, the Buddha did not stop. A diagnosis is only half the work. It naturally leads to the next crucial question. Where does this dukkha come from? What is its source? What is the cause of this universal disease? Having looked with courage into the face of our shared human condition, the pervasive dissatisfaction known as dukkha, we arrive at the next stage of the great physician's diagnosis. An honest examination of a symptom is incomplete without a clear identification of its cause. If dukkha is the fever, the ache, the dis-ease, then what is the virus that gives rise to it? The second noble truth answers this question with surgical precision. It states that the origin of our suffering, the root of all our anxiety and discontent, is a force known as tanha. This ancient word from the Pali language is often translated as craving, but its deeper meaning is closer to a relentless thirst. It is a primal, driving, compulsive energy that arises from a fundamental sense of lack. It is the engine of the restless monkey mind, the fuel for the hedonic treadmill. It is the deep, internal thirst that convinces us that our peace, our wholeness, our happiness lies somewhere outside of ourselves, in the next experience, the next possession, the next moment. This insatiable thirst manifests in three primary ways. The first and most obvious is kamatana, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for anything that gratifies our five senses and our mind. It is the craving for the taste of a specific food, the desire to lose ourselves in the drama of a television series, the longing for the touch of another person. It's the compulsive need to check our phones for the small dopamine hit of a new notification, the thirst for beautiful sights, pleasant sounds, and alluring smells. The problem, this wisdom teaches, is not the pleasure itself. A beautiful sunset is beautiful. A delicious meal is delicious. The problem is the thirst, the needy, desperate quality of the craving that precedes the pleasure, and the clinging that follows it. It is the attachment to these fleeting experiences as the source of our happiness that creates the cycle of seeking and inevitable disappointment. The second form of this thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is bhavatana, the craving to become, the craving for existence. This is the thirst of the ego. It is the deep drive to be somebody, to carve out a solid and lasting identity for ourselves in the world. It is the craving for status, for fame, for power, for recognition. It's the ambition that drives us to climb the corporate or social ladder, not for the joy of the work, but for the validation it provides. It is the obsession with building a legacy, with being remembered, with leaving a mark that proves I was here. This is the craving that fuels our social media personas, our carefully curated images of success and happiness. It is the deep-seated fear of being invisible, of being a nobody, of facing the reality of our own impermanence. It is the ego's desperate attempt to make itself real and permanent in a world where everything is fluid and transient. The third form may seem paradoxical, but it is just as powerful. It is vibhavatana, the craving for non-existence or annihilation. This is the thirst to get rid of something unpleasant. When we experience a painful emotion like fear, shame, or grief, this craving arises as the intense wish for that feeling to simply go away. It is the force behind our avoidance strategies. It's the person who turns to alcohol, drugs, or mindless entertainment, not for pleasure, but to numb a painful reality, to annihilate a feeling they cannot bear. In its most extreme form, it is the suicidal urge, the craving to annihilate the self, to escape the unbearable pain that the self is experiencing. But it also manifests in simpler ways. In the violent anger that wishes an annoying person would just disappear, or the frustration that wants to smash an object that isn't working properly. It is the forceful, aggressive push against reality, the desperate desire to obliterate whatever is causing us pain. These three thirst the pull towards pleasure, the drive to become, and the push away from panare, the three heads of the beast that generates our suffering. It is crucial here to make a distinction between healthy desire and this problematic thirst or craving. This path is not about becoming a passionless, lifeless being. A desire to learn, a desire to help others, a desire to be a kinder person, these are skillful and wholesome aspirations. The difference lies in the quality of the energy behind it. A healthy desire is gentle, open, and flexible. A craving, or tanha, is demanding, tense, and rigid. This is where a second, related concept arises, upadana, which translates as clinging or attachment. Tanha is the initial thirst that arises. Upadana is the mental act of grabbing onto the object of that thirst and refusing to let it go. It's the moment when "I would like this" transforms into "I cannot be happy without this." It is the tightening of the fist, the emotional and mental contraction around a person, an object, an outcome, or an idea. The suffering is not in the wanting, but in the clinging. It is in the demand that reality conform to our desires, and the subsequent pain when, inevitably, it does not. And we cling to more than just people and possessions. We cling desperately to our views and opinions. We wrap our identity so tightly around our beliefs, political, social, religious, that when those beliefs are challenged, we feel as though our very self is being attacked. This clinging to being right is the source of countless arguments, broken relationships, and even devastating wars. We also cling to rituals, rules, and traditions. And in the most subtle trap of all, we can even begin to cling to the spiritual path itself. We can become attached to a particular teacher, a specific meditation technique, or even the idea of becoming enlightened. The goal of liberation becomes just another notch on the ego's belt, another possession to be proud of. The very path that is meant to free us becomes another cage, another source of pride, judgment, and suffering. So, why do we do this? If this cycle of craving and clinging is the undeniable source of our dis-ease, why are we so trapped within it? The Buddha pointed to a single root cause, avidya, or ignorance. This is not ignorance in the sense of being uneducated or unintelligent. It is a fundamental non-seeing of reality as it truly is. It is a deep, perceptual blindness. Specifically, it is the ignorance of the truths we have already uncovered. Because we are ignorant of the truth of impermanence, anicca, we cling to things as if they could last forever. Because we are ignorant of the truth of no self, anatta, we are driven by the thirst to protect and enhance a phantom ego. And because we are ignorant of the truth of dukkha, we keep seeking ultimate and lasting satisfaction in things that are, by their very nature, unable to provide it. This ignorance is the darkness that allows the fire of craving to burn. It is the fuel for the whole bonfire of our suffering. Imagine a person who has reached into a fire and picked up a glowing red-hot piece of charcoal. They are holding it in their fist, and their hand is being seared and blistered. They are crying out in agony, their face contorted in pain. A wise person approaches and asks, "What is wrong? Why are you in such pain?" The person holding the coal cries out, "It's this coal. This coal is burning me. It is the source of all my suffering." The wise person looks at them with compassion and says, "The nature of a hot coal is to be hot. That is not going to change. Your suffering does not come from the coal itself. It comes from the fact that you are clinging to it. The source of your pain is your own fist, which refuses to open and let the coal go. This is our situation. The hot coals are the inevitable pains and losses of life, the harsh words, the disappointments, the objects of our intense desire. our dukkha is not inherent in these external things. It is generated and infinitely multiplied by our own mental act of clinging, our refusal to open the hand of the mind and let experience flow through without being grasped. This is the second noble truth. It is a teaching not of blame, but of incredible empowerment. For if the cause of our suffering is an internal process, an inner fire fueled by our own mind, then the solution must also lie within our grasp. We are not the helpless victims of a cruel world. We are simply people who are unconsciously holding onto a hot coal. And this realization that we are the ones holding on is the most hopeful news in the world. It means we have the power to let go. This diagnosis of the cause naturally points to the prognosis. A cure is possible. This leads us to the third noble truth, the beautiful and radical possibility that this fire of suffering can, in fact, be put out. Having faced the diagnosis of our universal dis-ease, dukkha, and having identified its cause as the inner fire of craving and clinging, we might be left with a sense of weary resignation. It can feel as though we are caught in an inescapable trap, destined to be burned by this fire for the rest of our lives. But it is precisely here, at this point of stark realism, that the path offers its most radical and luminous revelation. This is the third noble truth, known as nirodha, the truth of cessation. It is the profound and liberating promise that the fire of suffering can be extinguished. It is the light at the end of the tunnel, the definitive prognosis that a cure is not only possible, but is, in fact, our birthright. This state of cessation, of freedom, is more famously known by its Sanskrit name, nirvana. This word is perhaps one of the most misunderstood in all of spirituality. In the West, it has often been misinterpreted as a kind of heavenly paradise, a blissful place one goes to after death, as a reward for a good life. But nirvana is not a location. It is not a post-mortem destination. It is a psychological and spiritual state that can be realized right here, in this very life, in this very body. It is the tangible result of the complete cessation of the causes of suffering. It is what remains when the fever of dukkha has broken. The word nirvana itself provides the most powerful clue to its meaning. It literally means to blow out, or to extinguish, as one would blow out the flame of a candle. The crucial question, then, is what exactly is being extinguished? The teaching is very clear on this point. It is not the self that is being annihilated. It is not our personality, our life force, or our consciousness that is blown out. What is extinguished are the three flames that fuel the entire bonfire of our suffering. These are often called the three poisons, or the three fires: the fire of greed and grasping desire, the fire of hatred, aversion, and ill will, and the fire of delusion, the fundamental ignorance of reality's true nature. These three fires are the source of all our turmoil. When they are completely extinguished, what is left is the mind's natural, uncovered state, a state of perfect peace, profound wisdom, and boundless freedom. The suffering doesn't go anywhere. It simply ceases to be, because the fuel that fed it has been entirely consumed. To speak of this state is to risk diminishing it with words, for it transcends our ordinary concepts. Yet we can point to its qualities. Nirvana is, first and foremost, a state of ultimate freedom. It is freedom from the tyranny of the compulsive, needy drives of craving. It is freedom from the exhausting, reactive cycle of anger and aversion. It is freedom from the narrow, suffocating prison of the ego self, with all its fears, vanities, and insecurities. It is the freedom of a mind that is no longer a slave to its own conditioned patterns. It is also a state of unshakable peace. This is not the fragile, temporary happiness that depends on getting what we want or having pleasant external conditions. It is a deep, abiding, and radiant calm that underlies all experience. It is a peace so profound that it can coexist with the inevitable pains and challenges of life, just as the deep ocean remains tranquil and unmoved by the turbulent waves on its surface. And finally, it is a state of supreme clarity. It is the experience of seeing the world, ourselves, and others exactly as they are, without the distorting filters of desire, fear, and judgment. It is wisdom in its purest form. A common fear is that this state must be a cold, empty void, a passionless state of blank nothingness. If desire and aversion are gone, what is left? This is a fundamental misunderstanding. The emptiness spoken of in this context is not a void. It is an emptiness of suffering, an emptiness of delusion, an emptiness of a separate, solid self. When the self-centered, constricting fires of greed and hatred are put out, something remarkable happens. That space is not left empty. It is naturally flooded by their positive counterparts, which were there all along, merely obscured by the smoke. When the fire of selfish craving is extinguished, what blossoms is boundless compassion, karuna, and unconditional loving kindness, metta, for all beings. When the fire of delusion and ignorance is extinguished, what shines forth is unobscured, penetrating wisdom, prajna. Therefore, nirvana is not an escape from life. It is the capacity to engage with life more fully and more lovingly than ever before. It is not the death of feeling, but the birth of a compassion so vast it includes the entire universe. It is not a state of emptiness, but one of radical fullness and connection. Imagine you have spent your entire life inside a single, windowless room, sealed in absolute darkness. You know nothing else. This darkness is your reality. You are constantly stumbling, bumping into unseen furniture, feeling lost, anxious, and afraid. This darkness is your dukkha. Out of frustration, you could spend all your energy fighting it. You might try to shovel the darkness out the door, push it back with your hands, or scream at it to go away. But you would fail, because darkness is not a substance. You cannot fight it. Darkness is simply the absence of light. Now, imagine a wise friend comes to the door of your room. They do not join you in your pointless struggle. They do not lecture you on the physics of photons. They simply strike a match and light one small candle. In that single, luminous instant, the darkness that has defined your entire existence does not run away. It does not hide in the corners. It simply ceases to exist. It is completely, effortlessly, and instantaneously replaced by light. This is the promise of Nirodha. Our suffering, our dukkha, is the darkness. Our usual way of dealing with it, resisting, fighting, distracting ourselves, is as futile as trying to shovel darkness. Nirvana, and the wisdom that leads to it, is the candle. The path is not about fighting our suffering. It is about cultivating the light of wisdom. When we see reality clearly, the suffering, which is born of ignorance, naturally dissolves. We can all experience tiny tastes of this freedom, momentary glimmers of nirvana, in our ordinary lives. Have you ever been so completely absorbed in an activity, playing music, creating art, hiking in nature, that for a few moments your chattering mind went silent and your sense of a separate self just melted away? In that moment, you tasted the freedom of nirvana. Have you ever felt a wave of pure, selfless compassion for another person or an animal? A moment where your own petty concerns were completely forgotten in a genuine wish for their well-being? In that moment, you tasted the heart of nirvana. Have you ever sat and watched a sunset, and for a brief, silent interval, the commentary stopped and there was just pure, clear, peaceful seeing? In that moment, you tasted the mind of nirvana. These moments reveal that this state is not something foreign or supernatural. It is our own deepest nature, momentarily unveiled. The purpose of the path is to learn how to stabilize this awareness, to make these fleeting moments our abiding reality. This third noble truth is the great turning point of the path. It is the definitive, unequivocal declaration that our condition is not terminal. The prison of our own making has a door, and that door is not locked. Freedom from suffering is not a fanciful myth or a distant dream for a chosen few. It is a tangible, attainable reality for any human being who is willing to look deeply, with courage and honesty. Knowing that this cure exists is the most profound message of hope. But a prognosis, however hopeful, is not a treatment plan. Knowing that freedom is possible is one thing. Knowing the precise steps to take to walk out of the prison is another entirely. This brings us, naturally and logically, to the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths. It is the prescription itself, the detailed step-by-step map that shows us how to light that candle in our own darkened room. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. We have arrived at the culmination of the great physician's consultation. We have stared unflinchingly at the diagnosis of our dis-ease, dukkha. We have identified its root cause in the inner fire of craving, tanha. We have been given the beautiful and liberating prognosis that a cure, nirodha, is possible. Now, we receive the prescription. We are given the medicine itself. This is the fourth noble truth. the truth of the path leading to the end of suffering. This path is known as the Noble Eightfold Path, or Magga. It is not a set of rigid commandments to be blindly obeyed, but a comprehensive and practical guide for living, a design for human flourishing. It is the detailed map that shows us how to walk out of the prison of our own making and into the open air of freedom. Before he was the Buddha, the awakened one, the ascetic Gautama explored two extreme lifestyles. First, as a prince, he lived a life of complete sensual indulgence, surrounded by every pleasure imaginable. He found this path led only to a hollow and restless dissatisfaction. Later, as a wandering ascetic, he practiced the other extreme, subjecting himself to severe self-mortification, fasting until his body was skeletal, pushing himself to the very brink of death. He discovered this path was equally fruitless. It merely weakened his body and clouded his mind. It was in reflecting on the failure of these two extremes that he discovered the fundamental principle of the way forward, the middle way. He realized that the human spirit is like a lute. If you tighten the strings too much, they will snap. This is the path of harsh, aggressive asceticism. If you leave the strings too loose, they will not produce a sound. This is the path of lax, mindless indulgence. To create beautiful music, the strings must be tuned just right, not too tight, not too loose. This principle of exquisite balance is the very essence of the Noble Eightfold Path. Each of the 8 factors is qualified by the word right or sama in Pali. This does not mean right as opposed to wrong in a moralistic sense. It means complete, perfect, wholesome, or skillful. It refers to a way of being that is perfectly in tune, perfectly balanced to produce the music of liberation. These 8 factors are not sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder. They are interconnected and mutually supportive facets of a single, unified path. They are often grouped into 3 essential pillars of training: wisdom, panna, ethical conduct, sila, and mental discipline, samadhi. Like the strands of a strong rope, they are woven together, each one strengthening the others. The first pillar is wisdom, panna. This is the guiding light, the compass that ensures we are walking in the right direction. It consists of 2 factors. First is right view. This is the foundation of the entire path. It is seeing reality as it truly is, free from the distortions of our hopes and fears. It is the direct, experiential understanding of the 4 noble truths, themselves truly seeing the nature of dukkha in our lives, seeing its roots in our own craving, seeing the genuine possibility of its cessation, and understanding that this eightfold path is the way to that cessation. Without right view, our efforts, no matter how sincere, are directionless. It is the map that shows us where we are and where we are going. The second factor of wisdom is right intention. If right view is the map, right intention is the will to follow it. It is the conscious and deliberate cultivation of wholesome aspirations. Specifically, it means nurturing the intention of renunciation, which is the letting go of clinging, the intention of loving, kindness, which is the sincere wish for the well-being of all beings, including ourselves, and the intention of harmlessness, which is an active compassion that seeks to cause no suffering. It is about aligning the energy of our heart with the clarity of our sight. The second pillar is ethical conduct, sila. This is where wisdom and intention are translated into our actions in the world. It is the art of living in harmony with others, which creates a life free from remorse and external agitation, thereby supporting the calming of the mind. It has 3 factors. The first is right speech. This is the practice of using our words to create peace and understanding, not conflict and pain. It means abstaining from 4 types of harmful speech: lying, divisive speech that sets people against one another, harsh or abusive language, and idle chatter that serves no purpose but to agitate the mind. It is the commitment to speak what is true, what is kind, and what is beneficial. The second factor is right action. This involves aligning our physical actions with our compassionate intentions. It means abstaining from killing or causing harm to living beings, from taking what is not freely given, and from sexual conduct that is exploitative or causes harm to ourselves or others. It is a profound respect for the life, dignity, and property of all. The third factor is right livelihood. This extends our ethical practice into our work life. It means engaging in a profession that does not bring harm to the world. It is the avoidance of work that involves deception or trading in weapons, poisons, intoxicants, or living beings. It is the aspiration to make our living in a way that is honorable and contributes positively, or at the very least neutrally, to the well-being of society. The third and final pillar is mental discipline, samadhi. This is the inner laboratory where we work directly with our own mind. It is the practice that makes the clear-sightedness of wisdom and the harmony of ethical conduct truly possible. It consists of the final three factors. First is right effort. This is not a striving, white-knuckled effort, but a gentle, balanced, and persistent application of energy. It has four aspects: the effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states of mind from arising, the effort to abandon them if they have already arisen, the effort to cultivate wholesome, positive states of mind that have not yet arisen, and the effort to maintain and develop those wholesome states that are already present. It is the work of a wise gardener, patiently tending the soil of the mind. The second factor is right mindfulness. This is the heart of meditative practice. It is the capacity to remain present with our moment-to-moment experience, with clarity and non-judgment. It is being aware of the body and its sensations, of our feelings as they arise and pass away, of our mental states like anger or joy, and of the fundamental nature of reality itself. It is the practice of remembering to be the sky, not the cloud. The final factor is right concentration. This refers to the development of a steady, focused, and unified mind. Through practice, the monkey mind begins to settle, and we develop the ability to rest our attention on a single object, leading to states of profound calm, stillness, and clarity. This stable and sharpened mind becomes a powerful instrument, a laser beam of awareness that can penetrate the deepest layers of reality, reinforcing right view and bringing the entire path full circle. This path is not a system of belief to be accepted on blind faith. It is an invitation to practice, to investigate, to see for oneself. The Buddha's constant refrain was ehi passiko, an invitation which means, come and see for yourself. The validity of the path is not proven by ancient texts or learned scholars. It is proven in the laboratory of your own experience, in the tangible reduction of suffering, and the blossoming of peace and compassion in your own life. In the end, we return to the beautiful image of the lute. The Noble Eightfold Path is the art of tuning the instrument of our mind and body. The pillar of wisdom provides the understanding of music and the desire to play beautifully. The pillar of ethical conduct ensures that our instrument is well cared for and that our playing does not create dissonance in the world around us. And the pillar of mental discipline is the patient, skillful act of tuning each string effort, mindfulness, concentrations, so that it is not too tight and not too loose. When all 8 factors are present and working in concert, our life itself becomes the music. It becomes a harmonious expression of peace, clarity, love, and freedom. This entire, comprehensive map for human flourishing begins not with some monumental, heroic effort, but with the wisdom to see where we are going and the courage to take the first, most essential step. Before we can learn to walk this path skillfully, we must first learn the radical art of how to skillfully stop. The journey into the heart of practice begins with discovering the profound power of simply being still. Having been introduced to the majestic sweep of the Noble Eightfold Path, a comprehensive design for a life of wisdom and peace, one might feel a sense of being overwhelmed. It can seem like a towering mountain to climb, a monumental undertaking. Yet, the wisdom of this path is that this great journey does not begin with a frantic, heroic leap up the mountainside. It begins with a single, simple, yet profoundly radical act, an action that runs counter to the entire momentum of our modern world. It begins with the art of stopping. We live in a civilization that worships busyness. We wear our exhaustion like a badge of honor, and our jam-packed schedules like a symbol of our importance. We have been conditioned to believe that our value is directly proportional to our productivity. To be slammed is a sign of success. To be still is a sign of laziness. We are terrified of empty space in our calendars and in our minds. The idea of simply stopping, without a goal, without an agenda, without a distraction, can feel deeply unsettling, even threatening. We have become human doings rather than human beings. perpetually running from a deep-seated fear of what we might find if we were to simply cease our motion and be quiet. The vast majority of our lives are lived on autopilot. From the moment we wake to the moment we sleep, we are driven by a powerful momentum of habit and conditioning. We move through our routines, respond to emails, navigate conversations, and consume information, all within a kind of waking trance. We are like actors in a play who have forgotten they are acting, completely lost in the drama, reacting to cues without any conscious awareness. The act of stopping is like a director suddenly yelling, "Cut." It is a deliberate and conscious interruption of this unconscious flow. For one moment, we step out of the relentless chain of stimulus and reaction. We press the pause button on the endless inner monologue. This pause does not solve our problems, but it does something far more important. It creates a space. And in this space, for the first time, we have the opportunity to truly arrive in our own lives. What do we do in this sacred pause? The practice is deceptively simple. We do nothing. We don't try to fix anything. We don't analyze our past or plan our future. We don't try to force ourselves to feel calm or peaceful. We simply allow our awareness to gently notice what is already here. We might bring our attention to the body, and for the first time all day, notice the tightness in our shoulders, the clenching in our jaw, the shallow nature of our breathing. We might notice the weather of our emotional landscape, perhaps a low-grade hum of anxiety, a flicker of irritation, or a surprising touch of contentment. We might observe the state of our mind itself, noticing if it is racing like a stormy sea or is relatively calm. The key to this practice is to observe with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity. We are not an inspector looking for faults, but a kind friend, simply checking in, asking, "How are things right now, in this moment?" This simple act of pausing and noticing is the first step in reclaiming our freedom. So much of our suffering is born from our instantaneous, unconscious reactions. An email with a critical tone lands in our inbox, and before we know it, the body has tensed, the mind is spinning defensive stories, and the emotion of anxiety has completely hijacked our system. We have gone from a state of relative calm to one of agitated reactivity in a matter of seconds, without any conscious choice in the matter. The pause creates a crucial gap, a circuit breaker, between the external stimulus and our internal response. In that precious, spacious gap, choice is born. We can feel the initial spark of anger arise, but we don't have to fan it into a raging fire. We can notice the first wave of anxiety, but we don't have to be swept away by its tide. We are no longer a helpless puppet pulled by the strings of our conditioning. We are moving from a life of blind reaction to one of wise response. This is the very beginning of becoming the master of our own inner world, rather than a perpetual servant to its chaotic demands. There is a classic Zen analogy that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine you are holding a glass of water that is filled with mud and silt. As long as you keep shaking and stirring the glass, the water remains murky, cloudy, and opaque. You cannot see through it. This is the state of our mind when it is constantly agitated by the stirring of our thoughts, our worries, and our endless doing. Out of a desire for clarity, you might try to force the water to become clear. You might try to scoop the mud out, or pour the water through a cloth filter, but these actions are just more forms of agitation, and they only make the water cloudier. Then, a wise teacher suggests a different approach. They tell you to simply place the glass on a stable surface and leave it alone. Do not touch it. Do not stir it. Just let it be. At first, it seems like nothing is happening, but if you watch with patience, you will witness a natural miracle. The heavier particles of mud begin to gently drift downward. Then the lighter particles of silt begin to settle, slowly, effortlessly, guided by the simple, inexorable law of gravity. The sediment collects at the bottom of the glass. The water begins to clear, becoming more and more transparent, until finally, it is perfectly luminous and still. The mud is still there, but it is resting harmlessly at the bottom, no longer obscuring the water's natural clarity. Our mind is this glass of water. Our thoughts, worries, and fears are the mud. Our constant striving, analyzing, and distracting is the stirring that keeps our mind in a state of turmoil. The act of stopping is the practice of setting the glass down. We don't have to fight our thoughts. We don't have to forcibly suppress our emotions. We simply have to cease the inner agitation. If we can allow our mind to rest, to be still, the mud of our afflictions will naturally settle on its own, revealing the inherent nature of the mind itself, which is, and always has been, fundamentally clear, calm, and bright. This practice does not require a silent monastery or a special retreat. It can be woven into the fabric of our busiest days. It is the practice of the red light meditation when your car is stopped. Instead of reaching for your phone, you simply stop and feel the sensation of your hands on the steering wheel. It is the practice of taking one conscious breath before you answer the phone. It is using the moment you walk through a doorway as a reminder to pause and consciously arrive in the new space. These are microdoses of stillness, small moments of setting the glass down that can gradually and profoundly transform the entire texture of our lives. The act of stopping, therefore, is not a passive retreat from life. It is one of the most active, powerful, and courageous things we can do. It is the foundational practice upon which the entire Eightfold Path is built. It is the radical act of stepping off the frantic treadmill of doing and consciously entering the sacred sanctuary of being. This practice of letting the muddy water of the mind settle is our gateway to peace. But as we sit in this newfound stillness, we quickly discover how easily the mind is stirred up again. To stabilize ourselves in this quiet space, to find our footing in the midst of life's inevitable currents, we need an anchor. And the simplest, most profound, and most reliable anchor we all possess is already with us, closer than our own skin. It is the gentle, rhythmic, life-giving reality of our own breath. Having discovered the radical power of stopping, of stepping off the frantic treadmill of our lives, we find ourselves in a quiet, open space. The muddy water of the mind has been given a chance to settle, but we quickly discover that this stillness is fragile. A single thought, a passing memory, a future worry can act like a sudden jolt, stirring up the sediment all over again, and we are once more lost in the cloudy turmoil of our inner world. To stabilize ourselves in this newfound presence, to find our footing when the inevitable currents of the mind begin to pull at us, we need an anchor. The wisdom of this path does not ask us to find this anchor in a complex philosophy or a distant ideal. It points us to something that is already with us, closer than our own heartbeat, as reliable as the tides, and as free as the air itself. It points us to our own breath. The breath is unique among all the objects of our experience for one simple reason. It is always in the present moment. Your thoughts are almost never here. They are ghosts of the past, replaying regrets and savoring old victories, or they are phantoms of the future, rehearsing anxieties and spinning fantasies. The mind is a natural time traveler, but the breath cannot time travel. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot inhale a future breath. The physical sensation of the air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs, and then gently releasing is an event that can only ever happen now. Therefore, the simple, conscious act of bringing your attention to the feeling of your own breathing is the most direct and effective portal back to the present moment. It is the rope you can use to pull your wandering mind back from the scattered realms of past and future and return it to the singular reality of the here and now. It is the ultimate homecoming. The breath serves as a profound bridge, uniting aspects of our being that are often disconnected. It is the bridge between the mind and the body. The mind can be anywhere, lost in a daydream or a worry, 1,000 miles away, but the body is always, unequivocally, here. When we are lost in thought, we are disembodied. We don't feel the ground beneath our feet or the chair supporting our weight. By placing our attention on the physical, tangible sensation of the breath flowing through the body, we reunite these two halves of ourselves. The scattered mind is gently escorted back home to the body, and for a moment, we are whole again, unified, and fully present in our own skin. It is also a bridge between our conscious and unconscious worlds. For most of our lives, breathing is an automatic, autonomic process. It happens without any conscious thought or effort, managed by the ancient wisdom of our nervous system. Yet, unlike the beating of our heart or the digestion of our food, we can also consciously influence our breath. We can choose to hold it, to deepen it, or to make it faster. This unique position at the intersection of the voluntary and the involuntary makes it a powerful tool for inner communication. By paying gentle, sustained attention to this normally unconscious process, we begin to learn its language. We notice how a moment of fear instantly makes the breath shallow and tight. We see how a feeling of ease allows the breath to become deep and slow. And we discover that by consciously bringing a gentle rhythm to the breath, we can send a message of safety and calm back to our nervous system, soothing the very emotions that agitated it. The practice of watching the breath is, at its heart, a profound training in acceptance. The instruction is not to breathe in a special way. It is not a technique for deep breathing or breath control, although that can be a different and also useful practice. The core instruction of mindfulness of breathing is simply to observe the breath exactly as it is, without any attempt to change or manipulate it. The invitation is to become a curious, gentle scientist of your own experience. Notice, is this in-breath long or short? Is this out, breath deep or shallow? Where do I feel the sensation most vividly? Is it the cool touch of the air at the tip of the nose? Is it the subtle rise and fall of the chest? Or is it the gentle expansion and contraction of the abdomen? There is no right or wrong answer. The practice is simply to rest your awareness on the raw physical sensation of breathing, letting it be whatever it is. In a world where we are constantly trying to fix, improve, and control everything around us, the simple act of watching something without interfering is a revolutionary act of letting be. It is a direct, embodied antidote to our illusion of control. Of course, when we undertake this practice, we will quickly discover that the mind has its own agenda. We will resolve to watch the breath, and within a few seconds, we will find ourselves lost, carried away on a stream of thought about work, or dinner, or a conversation from yesterday. It is essential to understand that this is not a failure. It is simply the nature of the untrained mind. The true practice is not to never get distracted. The true practice happens in the moment you realize you have been distracted. That moment of waking up from the dream of thought, that is the moment of mindfulness. And the instruction at that moment is not to scold or criticize yourself. The instruction is to gently acknowledge where the mind has gone. Thinking. And then, with the kindness you would show to a small puppy that has wandered off, to gently and patiently escort your attention right back to the feeling of the breath. In this way, every single breath becomes a new beginning. It doesn't matter that you were lost in thought for the last 5 minutes. You can always start again, fresh, with this in-breath. The past, even the past of a few seconds ago, is gone. You can let it go. Each breath is an opportunity to forgive yourself, to release the past and the future, and to arrive once more in the pristine sanctuary of the present moment. This transforms the practice from a grim struggle for perfect, unbroken concentration into a gentle, continuous rhythm of returning. It is a practice steeped in patience, kindness, and infinite forgiveness for our own humanity. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered simple verses to help guide this practice, making it more tangible and embodied. He suggested silently reciting, breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. This is not a complex mantra, but a simple recognition of reality that anchors the mind and prevents it from wandering. He taught verses that connect the mind and body. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I feel at ease. As you follow the breath, you can actively release the tension you find in your shoulders, your jaw, your belly. He even taught a verse to cultivate a gentle joy. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I release. A tiny, gentle half-smile can relax hundreds of muscles in the face and sends a powerful signal of safety and contentment to the brain. This is not about forcing a feeling, but about inviting a quality of gentle, loving acceptance into your practice. The breath, then, is so much more than the simple exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. It is our ever-present anchor to the now. It is our bridge between mind and body. It is our most patient teacher in the art of acceptance. And it is our constant, moment-by-moment invitation to begin again. It is the most humble, most accessible, and yet most profound tool we possess for cultivating a mind that is stable, clear, and peaceful. With our hand resting firmly on this reliable anchor, we create a stable platform within ourselves. From this place of grounded stability, we are now fully equipped to turn our awareness outward, to observe the more turbulent weather of our inner world, the passing thoughts, the shifting emotions, the myriad sensations without being thrown off balance or swept away. We are ready to move from simply anchoring our attention to developing a panoramic, non-judgmental awareness of everything that flows through the field of our experience. This is the heart of the practice known as mindfulness. Having found our anchor in the gentle, rhythmic reality of the breath, we have created a platform of stability in the midst of the mind's restless sea. The breath is our safe harbor, the place we can return to again and again. Now, with this anchor firmly in place, we are ready to broaden our perspective. We can lift our gaze from the single point of the anchor and begin to observe the vast, ever-changing ocean of our entire experience. This is the practice of mindfulness, or sati in the Pali language. It is the art of developing a panoramic, spacious, and non-judgmental awareness of everything that arises and passes away in the present moment. It is essential to understand, from the very beginning, that mindfulness is not the same as thinking. In fact, they are almost opposite faculties. Our default mode of existence is to think about our lives. We are constantly narrating, analyzing, judging, and creating stories about our experience. Mindfulness is the practice of stepping out of the stream of commentary and directly knowing experience as it is, before the labels and stories are added. For example, a sharp pain suddenly arises in your shoulder. The thinking mind immediately launches into a narrative. Oh no, there's that pain again. It's probably from sitting at the computer all day. What if it's something serious? This is going to ruin my workout. This is terrible. I hate this feeling. In an instant, a simple physical sensation has been magnified into a source of anxiety, fear, and misery. Mindfulness offers a radically different approach. It does not engage with the story. It simply turns its clear, gentle attention to the raw data of the experience itself. There is a sensation of tightness in the right shoulder, a feeling of heat, a throbbing quality. It is intense now. Now, it is slightly less intense. It observes the changing nature of the sensation with the detached curiosity of a scientist. By refusing to add the second layer of mental commentary, the secondary wave of suffering, the anxiety, the fear, the frustration is never created. The pain is just a pain. It is not a catastrophe. Mindfulness is a silent, clear knowing, a direct perception of reality, while thinking is a noisy, conceptual interpretation of it. The most powerful metaphor for this practice is that of the sky and the clouds. Your fundamental nature, your core consciousness, is like a vast, open, limitless blue sky. It is inherently spacious, clear, and peaceful. The contents of your experience, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your physical sensations are like the clouds that drift through the sky. Some clouds are bright, white, and fluffy, like moments of joy, love, or inspiration. Other clouds are dark, heavy, and menacing, like thunderheads of anger, grief, or fear. Some are just thin, wispy, and unremarkable, like the random, fleeting thoughts that pass through the mind all day. Our habitual mistake, the source of so much of our suffering, is that we forget we are the sky and believe we are the clouds. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we say, "I am sad," and we collapse our entire being into that single temporary weather pattern. When a storm of anger rages, we become the storm, completely possessed by its turbulent energy. We spend our lives chasing the pleasant white clouds and desperately trying to run away from the dark ones, a life dictated by the shifting weather of our inner world. Mindfulness is the revolutionary practice of remembering that you are the sky. It is a profound shift in identification. The sky is not afraid of the storm clouds. The sky is not attached to the beautiful, sunny clouds. The sky does not try to hold on to one type of cloud or push another away. It has enough space for all of it. It allows all weather to arise, to be present for a time, and to pass away, all without being fundamentally changed or stained by the experience. To practice mindfulness is to learn to rest in this vast, sky-like nature of your own awareness, allowing the clouds of your experience to simply come and go. When we adopt this stance of the silent watcher, something miraculous begins to happen to our most difficult emotions. Negative states like anger, jealousy, and fear are like a fire. To burn, they require fuel. The fuel they consume is our attention, our identification with them, and the stories we spin around them. When you feel a surge of anger, the habitual reaction is to immediately start feeding it with thoughts. I have every right to be angry. What they did was unforgivable. I can't believe their nerve. Each thought is another log thrown onto the fire, making it blaze hotter and more uncontrollably. Mindfulness practice cuts off the fuel supply. When anger arises, instead of jumping into the story, you turn your awareness to the raw, physical sensations of the anger in your body. You notice the heat rising in your chest, the tightening of your fists, the clenching of your jaw, the rapid beating of your heart. You simply watch this powerful energy as pure sensation, without judgment and without a story. By observing it in this way, you are not suppressing it, nor are you indulging it. You are simply allowing the raw energy of the emotion to manifest and burn itself out naturally. Like a great wave on the ocean, it rises, crests, and inevitably falls back into the sea. When we stop struggling against the wave and stop being carried away by it, it simply loses its terrifying power over us. We are no longer possessed by our emotions. We are the calm, compassionate witness to their passing show. This practice is not something reserved for a special time on a meditation cushion. While formal sitting practice is invaluable for strengthening the muscle of attention, the ultimate goal is to bring this quality of awareness into the moments of our ordinary life. Any activity, no matter how mundane, can become a profound meditation. When you eat, you can practice mindful eating. Instead of watching a screen or being lost in thought, you can pay attention to the colors and textures of your food. You can feel the sensation of chewing and truly taste the flavors for the very first time. When you walk from one room to another, you can practice mindful walking, feeling the contact of your feet on the floor, noticing the simple miracle of your body moving through space. Even a resented chore like washing the dishes can be transformed. You can feel the warmth of the water on your hands, see the shimmer of the soap bubbles, hear the sound of the plates. In these moments, the task is no longer a burden to be rushed through. It becomes a precious opportunity to be fully alive and present. A classic Zen story beautifully illustrates the essence of this practice. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were traveling together. They came to a wide, muddy river where a beautiful young woman stood, hesitating to cross for fear of ruining her fine silk robes. Without a word, the senior monk walked over, lifted the woman into his arms, carried her across the turbulent water, and set her down gently on the dry bank. She bowed in gratitude, and the senior monk bowed in return and continued his journey. The junior monk followed, but he was in turmoil. He was scandalized. His mind was a storm of judgment. How could he do that? Our vows forbid us to touch a woman. It is a grave transgression. He is a disgrace. For hours, they walked on in silence. The junior monk's mind churned, replaying the scene over and over, building his righteous anger. He could barely contain himself. Finally, as they neared their destination, he could stand it no longer and burst out, "Brother, I must ask you, how could you break your vows and carry that woman across the river?" The senior monk stopped, turned to him, and with a look of genuine compassion, replied softly, "Brother, I left that woman by the side of the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story is a perfect teaching on mindfulness. The senior monk was fully present with the reality of the situation, and a person needed help, and he responded with compassion. Once the action was complete, he let it go completely. He left the event by the side of the river. The junior monk, however, trapped in his thinking, judging mind, clung to the event. He carried the weight of it, the memory of it, the story of it, for hours, creating his own profound and unnecessary suffering. Mindfulness is the simple, powerful art of learning to leave the woman by the side of the river. It is the practice of letting each experience be what it is, and then letting it go. It is the path from being a prisoner of our own experience to becoming the silent, spacious, and compassionate witness of it all. This practice is revolutionary, but as we develop this ability to watch, we will inevitably encounter difficult, painful weather patterns in the sky of our mind. It is one thing to watch a pleasant thought drift by. It is another thing entirely to stand firm in a raging storm of grief or fear. Therefore, our practice must also include a specific skill, the art of compassionately caring for these difficult emotions when they arise. As we cultivate the capacity of the silent watcher, resting in the vast open sky of our own awareness, we learn to allow the ordinary clouds of thought and feeling to pass by without being disturbed. This is a practice of profound peace, but inevitably, the weather of our inner world will change. A storm will gather on the horizon. A thunderhead of anger, a hurricane of grief, or a dense fog of fear will roll in, obscuring the blue sky and threatening to overwhelm us. In these moments, the detached stance of a distant observer may not feel like enough. To navigate these intense inner storms, we need to supplement our mindfulness with another quality, another skill. We must learn not just to watch our emotions, but to befriend them. We must learn the courageous art of embracing the storm. Our conditioning teaches us to relate to our difficult emotions as enemies. We label feelings like anger, sadness, jealousy, and fear as negative. We see them as character flaws to be hidden, as weaknesses to be ashamed of, as dangerous forces to be suppressed or controlled. This inner battle is exhausting and futile. This path invites us to consider a radically different perspective. Our emotions are not our enemies. They are messengers. They are expressions of energy arising within our system, often carrying valuable information. Anger may be a messenger telling us that a boundary has been violated. Fear may be a messenger alerting us to a perceived threat to our safety. Sadness may be a messenger signaling a deep loss. The emotion itself is not the problem. The problem is our adversarial relationship with it. When we treat these messengers as enemies, our primary strategy is suppression. We push them down, lock them in the basement of our psyche, and pretend they don't exist. But this energy does not disappear. Imagine trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. You can do it, but it requires constant, strenuous effort. Your muscles are tense, your focus is narrow, and you cannot attend to anything else. The moment your attention slips, the moment you get tired, the ball does not just gently surface. It explodes out of the water with a force far greater than it had initially. This is a perfect metaphor for suppressed emotion. The anger we push down, the grief we refuse to feel, the insecurities we hide, they don't go away. They fester in the darkness, draining our energy, creating chronic anxiety, and manifesting as unexplained physical tension. And eventually, they will erupt, often with volcanic and disproportionate force, triggered by some minor, unrelated event. The mindful path offers an alternative to this self-destructive inner war. It is a gentle, step-by-step process of turning towards our emotions with curiosity and care. The first step is simply to recognize. As the storm gathers, we use our mindfulness to simply name what is happening without judgment. We can say to ourselves, this is the feeling of anger, or hello sadness, I see you are here. This simple act of labeling creates a crucial space. We are no longer lost in the emotion. We are the one who is aware of the emotion. This recognition is the first step out of possession and into presence. The second step is a radical one: acceptance. Instead of instinctively pushing the feeling away, we consciously give it permission to be there. We can whisper to ourselves, "Anger, you are welcome here," or "It is okay to feel this sadness right now." This is not the same as approving of the emotion or deciding to act on it. It is simply the cessation of our internal resistance. It is the declaration of a ceasefire in the war against ourselves. This step alone can release a tremendous amount of the tension and suffering associated with the emotion, for it is often our resistance to a feeling that is more painful than the feeling itself. The third step is to investigate. This is not a mental analysis of why we are feeling a certain way. That would only be feeding the story and fueling the fire. This is an embodied investigation. With gentle curiosity, we ask the question, what does this emotion actually feel like in my body? We bring our awareness to the raw, physical sensations of the feeling. Where does this anger live in my body? Is it a burning heat in my chest, a tight clenching in my stomach, a surge of energy in my arms? We explore its texture, its temperature, its vibration, without needing it to be different. We discover that an emotion is not a solid, monolithic thing. It is a dynamic, shifting cascade of physical sensations that are constantly in flux. By staying with the raw energy in the body, we bypass the mental narratives and allow the emotion to naturally run its course. Throughout this process, we use the breath as our compassionate tool. This is the fourth step, to embrace. We can use our in-breath to imagine gathering a quality of gentle, soothing kindness. Then, with our out-breath, we can direct that kindness towards the part of our body where the emotion is felt most intensely. It is as if we are using our breath to tenderly hold the hurting place within us. We are not trying to force the feeling to leave. We are simply offering it our steady, loving presence, creating a safe space for it to be felt and, eventually, to release. The guiding image for this entire practice is that of a good mother and her crying child. When a small baby begins to cry, a wise and loving mother does not get angry and shout at the child to be quiet. She does not ignore the child and pretend the crying isn't happening. She hears the cry as a signal of distress. She goes to the baby, picks it up, and holds it gently in her arms. She cradles the child against her heart, lending the baby her own warmth, her own calm, her own strength. She doesn't need to know the exact reason for the tears. Her first and most important action is simply to hold the pain in a loving, unconditional embrace. She rocks the baby, perhaps humming a soft tune, and simply stays present with the child's distress until, feeling safe and held, the crying naturally subsides. This is precisely how we can learn to relate to ourselves. Our difficult emotions, our anger, our fear, our deep sadness are like our own inner crying children. They are vulnerable parts of our psyche that are in pain and are calling out for our attention. The practice of mindfulness and compassion is the act of becoming a good mother to ourselves. When the child of our sadness begins to cry, we learn to stop, turn inward, and gently pick it up with our awareness. We learn to hold it with the warmth of our non-judgmental acceptance. We learn to soothe it with the gentle, rhythmic rocking of our own breath. We are not trying to silence the child, but to offer it the safety and love it needs to feel calm again. This practice of befriending our emotions is a profound journey into self-compassion. It transforms our inner world from a battlefield into a sanctuary. We learn that we are vast enough and strong enough to hold even the most intense inner storms with grace and tenderness. We stop being afraid of our own hearts. We learn that freedom is not found in a life without difficult emotions, but in our ability to meet any emotion that arises with an open, courageous, and loving presence. This internal practice of learning to care for our own suffering, of becoming a compassionate caregiver to our own heart, does not remain an internal experience. As we learn to hold our own inner crying child with tenderness, a remarkable change begins to occur. Our hearts naturally soften. They open outwards. We begin to hear the sound of the crying child in others. This deep, personal work of self-compassion is the fertile, essential ground from which true, boundless compassion for all beings is born. Having learned to embrace the storms of our inner world with the tenderness of a good mother, a profound shift begins to occur. The practice of turning towards our own pain with acceptance and care is not a self-contained exercise. It is a seed, and when that seed is watered with mindful attention, it naturally blossoms into the flower of compassion. This is the unfolding of karuna, the trembling of the heart in response to suffering, coupled with the sincere wish to see that suffering relieved. It is the natural extension of our inner work into the world, the moment our personal healing begins to heal everything around us. For most of us, the most difficult place to begin this practice is with ourselves. We live in cultures that often mistake self-criticism for a virtue, believing that being hard on ourselves is the key to motivation and success. We have a relentless inner critic, a voice that judges, shames, and belittles us in a way we would never dream of speaking to a friend or even a stranger. We are taught to be our own harshest taskmaster, and as a result, we live in a state of perpetual inner conflict. Self-compassion is the revolutionary act of offering ourselves the same kindness we would naturally extend to someone we love. It is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It is not about letting ourselves off the hook for harmful actions. It is about creating a safe and sane inner environment where we can acknowledge our imperfections and failures without being crushed by shame. It is the understanding that making mistakes is a part of the human condition, and that growth happens not through harsh judgment, but through gentle encouragement and the wisdom born of experience. It is learning to become our own best friend. As we cultivate this capacity for self-compassion, our perception of others begins to radically change. When we can look at our own flaws and failings with a kind and forgiving heart, we are much more able to see the struggles and imperfections of others with that same kindness. The practice begins to dissolve the illusion of separation. We start to recognize the shared humanity that connects us all. A simple but profound practice is to look at another person, whether a loved one, a colleague, or a stranger on the street, and silently reflect. Just like me, this person wishes to be happy. Just like me, this person wishes to be free from pain. Just like me, this person has experienced sadness, loneliness, and despair. When we see the person who has angered us not as a malicious enemy, but as another being lost in their own dukkha, driven by their own fears and cravings, the armor of our anger and resentment begins to melt away. We no longer see an adversary. We see a fellow human being, struggling in their own way, just like us. This compassionate engagement with the world is not the heavy, sorrowful burden we might imagine it to be. There is a crucial distinction between empathy and compassion. Empathy is the ability to feel what another person is feeling. If they are drowning in despair, we can feel ourselves drowning too. This can lead to what is known as empathic distress or burnout, where we are so overwhelmed by the suffering of the world that we shut down. Compassion, or karuna, is different. It includes the empathic understanding of another's pain, but it is combined with the warmth of love and the active, heartfelt wish for their suffering to end. It is not a passive state of sorrow, but an active, empowering state of loving kindness. And a remarkable truth of the path is that compassionate action is one of the deepest sources of joy available to us. When we are engaged in an act of kindness, our own obsessive, self-centered worries naturally recede. We are liberated from the cramped prison of the self. The heart expands, and in that expansion, we feel a profound sense of connection and joy. Helping to heal others is one of the most powerful ways to heal ourselves. This path of awakening is often described as being like a great bird, which needs two wings to fly. One wing is wisdom, or prajna. This is the clear seeing of reality, as it is the understanding of impermanence, no self, and the nature of suffering. The other wing is compassion, or karuna. These two wings must be developed together in perfect balance. Wisdom without compassion can become cold, sterile, and detached. It can lead to a form of spiritual arrogance, a kind of aloofness from the messy reality of the world's suffering. A person with only the wing of wisdom might understand the mechanics of suffering perfectly, but be unable to connect with a person who is in pain. On the other hand, compassion without wisdom can be blind and ineffective. This is sometimes called idiot compassion. It is the well-intentioned desire to help that, lacking a clear understanding of the situation, ends up causing more harm. It is giving a person what they want, rather than what they truly need. It is enabling harmful habits out of a misguided fear of causing short-term upset. True compassion is always guided by the clear light of wisdom. The two wings work together, creating a flight that is both graceful and powerful. A story from the life of the Buddha illustrates the centrality of this practice with profound beauty. In the community of monks, there was a man named Putigata Tissa. He had fallen gravely ill with a disease that caused his body to break out in oozing, festering sores. The condition was foul-smelling and believed to be contagious, and so the other monks, out of fear and revulsion, had completely abandoned him. He lay alone in his own filth, weak and in despair, with no one to care for him. The Buddha, with his penetrating awareness, knew of the monk's plight and went to his dwelling. He ordered his chief attendant, Ananda, to boil some water. Then, with his own hands, the Buddha began to gently wash the sick monk's diseased body, cleaning his wounds with the warm water and carefully changing his soiled robes, all while speaking to him with words of comfort and tenderness. The other monks, hearing what was happening, gathered at a distance, watching with a mixture of awe and shame. When he had finished tending to the sick man, the Buddha turned to them and delivered a powerful teaching. "Monks," he said, "you have no mothers and fathers here to look after you. If you do not look after one another, who else will? Let this be known. He who wishes to tend to me, let him tend to the sick." Serving the sick and the suffering is the same as serving the Buddha himself. In this single, profound act, the Buddha demonstrated that the highest expression of enlightenment is not found in a state of transcendent bliss, far removed from the world. It is found in the simple, humble, and courageous act of getting your hands dirty to alleviate the suffering of another being. Compassion, then, is not a moralistic duty or a commandment to be followed. It is the natural radiance of a heart that has been softened by the deep understanding of its own vulnerability and its profound connection to all of life. It begins with the revolutionary practice of being kind to ourselves. It expands outward, recognizing our shared humanity in others. And it finds its highest expression in wise, loving action. It is the indispensable wing that, together with wisdom, allows us to soar to the heights of our spiritual potential. With the mind stabilized by mindfulness and the heart made resilient by compassion, we create the perfect inner conditions for the deepest insights to dawn. This leads us now to explore a central, electrifying teaching within the Zen tradition, which suggests that truth is not always something we build gradually, brick by brick. Sometimes, the truth arrives in a flash, like lightning in a dark sky. We must now turn our attention from the path of cultivation to the gateless gate, the idea that words and teachings are merely fingers pointing at a moon that we must, ultimately, see for ourselves. Having balanced our practice with the two great wings of wisdom and compassion, and having been introduced to the comprehensive map of the Eightfold Path, we have established a solid foundation for our journey. We have a diagnosis, a cause, a prognosis, and a prescription. This is the gradual, systematic path of cultivation. But within this tradition, there flows another current, a stream of wisdom particularly emphasized in the school of Zen, which offers a vital and paradoxical caution. It warns us against becoming too attached to the very map we are holding. It reminds us that the goal is not to study the map, but to arrive at the destination. This is the teaching of the finger pointing at the moon. Imagine a teacher who wishes to show a student the full moon on a clear night. The teacher raises a hand, points a single finger towards the glowing orb in the sky and says, "Look, see the beautiful moon." The student, however, being foolish and literal, does not lift their gaze to the sky. Instead, they stare intently at the teacher's finger. They study its shape, its wrinkles, its fingernail. They might begin to analyze the finger, comparing it to other fingers they have seen. They might even come to revere the finger, believing that this pointer is itself the sacred object of the teaching. The teacher would sigh and have to explain, "The finger is not the moon. The finger is only here to direct your attention. If you become obsessed with the finger, if you mistake the pointer for the point, you will live your entire life in its shadow and never once behold the magnificent, luminous moon itself." This simple story is perhaps the most important metaphor in the entire Zen tradition. The moon is the ultimate truth. It is enlightenment, liberation, nirvana. It is the direct, unmediated, living experience of your own true nature. The finger is everything else. The finger represents all the teachings, all the scriptures, all the philosophies, all the concepts and words, including every word being spoken in this video. The finger is the raft we build to cross the river. It is the map that guides us through the wilderness. It is essential, it is skillful, it is necessary. Without the finger, we might not know where to look, but it is, and always will be, just a finger. And the ultimate tragedy of the spiritual path is to spend one's life becoming an expert on the finger. We who live in the modern world are particularly susceptible to this mistake. We are information gatherers, concept collectors. We love to intellectualize. We can read dozens of books on spirituality, watch countless lectures, and learn all the proper terms in Sanskrit and Pali. We can become adept at debating the finer points of the Four Noble Truths or the intricacies of the law of karma. This accumulation of knowledge feels like progress. The ego, the constructed self, loves this game because it can now add spiritual expert to its long list of identities. It can take pride in its understanding, but this is a dangerous trap. It is the illusion of knowledge, mistaking the intellectual grasp of a concept for the living embodiment of its truth. It is meticulously polishing the finger while the moon shines, unnoticed, right above our heads. The Zen tradition has always been wary of this trap. Its core attitude is famously summarized in a 4-line stanza: a special transmission outside the scriptures, not depending on words and letters, pointing directly to the human mind, seeing into one's own nature and attaining Buddhahood. Let us unpack this. A special transmission outside the scriptures does not mean that Zen disrespects the ancient texts. It means that the ultimate truth, the direct experience of awakening, cannot be contained in any book. It must be transmitted more directly, from heart to heart, from mind to mind. Not depending on words and letters reinforces this. The direct seeing of reality is pre-verbal. non-conceptual. Words can only ever approximate it. Like a photograph of a magnificent meal can never convey its taste. Pointing directly to the human mind tells us where the laboratory is. The truth is not to be found in a library or a distant land. It is to be found by turning the gaze of awareness inward and examining the nature of our own consciousness. And finally, seeing into one's own nature is the goal. It is a direct, unmediated perception of the luminous, peaceful awareness that is our fundamental essence. This is a radical call to shift our entire orientation from one of learning about the truth to one of directly realizing it. Another powerful parable used by the Buddha is that of the raft. He said that his teachings are like a raft, skillfully constructed to help a person cross a dangerous river, the river of suffering, to get to the safe and peaceful other shore, the shore of nirvana. The raft is indispensable. To try and swim the river without it would be foolish. We would surely be swept away by the currents of our own confusion and craving. We should use the raft with diligence and care. But what does a wise person do when they have successfully reached the other shore? Do they say to themselves, "This is such a magnificent raft. It saved my life. I must now carry it on my back for the rest of my journey?" Of course not. To do so would be absurd. The raft, which was a precious tool for crossing the river, would now become a heavy and pointless burden on dry land. A wise person, full of gratitude, leaves the raft at the river's edge and continues their journey unencumbered. The concepts of the path, even the most beautiful and helpful ones, are the raft. The ideas of mindfulness, compassion, impermanence, and even the concept of nirvana itself are all parts of the raft. They are skillful means to get us to the other shore. But to fully arrive, to fully experience the freedom of that shore, we must be willing to let go of the raft itself. We must be willing to release our conceptual grip on the very ideas that helped us get there. The experience of the moon is not the thought moon. This teaching does not ask us to abandon the path or to burn the map. It is a caution against a subtle form of spiritual materialism, where we accumulate concepts instead of possessions. We should study the finger with great respect. We should use the raft with great skill. But we must never forget their ultimate purpose. They are here to serve our liberation, not to become new objects of clinging, new cages for the mind. The goal is not to become a perfect Buddhist. The goal is to become a perfect Buddha, an awakened being. The goal is not to be able to talk eloquently about the path, but to become a living, breathing embodiment of its peace and wisdom. This powerful admonition, this Zen roar that tells us to look beyond the finger and to leave the raft behind, leads us to a crucial and practical question. If the ultimate truth is beyond words, beyond concepts, beyond even the most sacred teachings, then how can we possibly come to know it? If we are not to rely on our thoughts, where else can we turn? The answer offered by the great masters is as simple as it is profound. It requires a subtle but total shift in the direction of our attention. Instead of focusing on the endless parade of objects that appear in our awareness, the thoughts, the feelings, the sounds, we must learn to turn our attention back towards the awareness itself. We must become intimately acquainted with the very nature of knowing. We must meet the sky that holds the clouds. Having been warned not to mistake the finger for the moon, not to confuse the map with the territory, we are left with a profound and practical question. If the ultimate truth of our being is not to be found in words, concepts, or scriptures, where then shall we look? The Zen masters, with their characteristic directness, point us away from the endless parade of objects that capture our attention, the thoughts, the feelings, the sensations, and towards the very source of the looking itself. They invite us to become acquainted with the silent, luminous, and ever-present ground of our being. This is the knowing nature, our original mind, the sky that is forever unstained by the clouds that pass through it. In different traditions, this fundamental essence has been given many names: Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, the self, or simply awareness. Let us use a simple, functional term: the knowing nature. It is the faculty of knowing that is prior to all experience. Before you have a thought, there must be a knowing awareness there to know it. Before you feel an emotion, there must be a knowing field there to feel it. It is the light by which all seeing happens. You cannot grasp it as an object, just as an eye cannot see itself directly, but you can realize it by relaxing into being what you already are. We can deepen our understanding of the metaphor of the sky and the clouds. In our earlier exploration, we practiced disidentifying with the clouds, realizing we are the sky that holds them. Now, we take a step further. We turn our attention to the nature of the sky itself. Even on the darkest, most turbulent day, when the sky is completely filled with raging storm clouds, has the sky itself gone anywhere? Has it been damaged, diminished, or stained by the storm? Behind the chaotic weather, the sky remains as it always is, vast, open, clear, and fundamentally peaceful. The storm is a temporary event happening within the sky. So it is with our minds. Even when we are completely consumed by a hurricane of anger, a deep fog of depression, or a whirlwind of anxiety, the silent, knowing awareness that witnesses it all is not, in itself, angry, depressed, or anxious. It remains untouched, unharmed, and ever present, waiting patiently for the weather to pass, and for its own nature to be recognized. This leads to one of the most liberating truths of the path. This peaceful, clear awareness is not something we need to achieve, create, or cultivate. It is not a goal to be reached after years of hard practice. It is our inherent nature. It is what we are, right now. The spiritual journey is not a process of construction, of building a new, more peaceful self. It is a process of deconstruction, of removing the layers of ignorance and conditioning that obscure the peace that has been here all along. It is a journey of recognition. Imagine you have been searching frantically for your glasses, looking all over the house, becoming more and more frustrated, only to have a friend point out that they have been perched on your head the entire time. The relief you feel is not because you have acquired something new. It is the relief of recognizing what was already there. Awakening is like that. It is waking up to the truth of our being that has been present in every moment of our lives. So how do we practice this recognition? It involves a subtle but profound shift in the direction of our attention, a shift from the object of experience to the subject, the knowing awareness itself. Let us take a simple sound. A bird begins to sing outside your window. Our normal habit is to focus entirely on the object, the sound of the bird. Our mind might say, "That's a lovely sound," or "I wonder what kind of bird that is." The practice is to gently shift the focus. While still hearing the bird's song, can you also become aware of the faculty of hearing? Can you sense the silent, receptive field of auditory awareness in which the sound of the bird is appearing, like a ripple on a still pond? Let's try it with a thought. A thought arises. I need to remember to buy milk. Our habit is to grab onto this thought and follow it down a rabbit hole of other thoughts about shopping, errands, and plans. The practice is to notice the thought, but then, instead of following it, to become aware of the silent, knowing space in which the thought appeared. Who or what is aware of this thought? What is the quality of the awareness that knows the thought without being the thought itself? The answer is not a word or another thought. The answer is a direct, intuitive recognition of the silent, spacious knowing that is its source and its witness. As we learn to rest in this knowing nature, to abide as the awareness rather than as the objects of awareness, we begin to perceive its inherent qualities. We notice that it is fundamentally peaceful. The thoughts may be chaotic, but the awareness that knows them is not. It is still. We notice that it is silent. The world may be noisy, the mind may be full of chatter, but the awareness that perceives the noise is itself silent. We notice that it is spacious. It is like an infinite, open field that can accommodate any and all experiences, pain, pleasure, joy, sorrow, without ever becoming full or crowded. And we notice that it is free. It is not bound by the content of our experience. When anger appears in awareness, awareness itself does not become angry. When sadness appears, awareness is not sad. It is forever free from the drama that it so perfectly witnesses. There is a beautiful Zen parable of the mirror. Imagine a perfect, flawless mirror, so clear and bright it seems to be made of pure light. You hold a beautiful, smiling face before it. The mirror reflects this image perfectly, without any attachment, without trying to hold on to the beautiful reflection. Then, you hold up a snarling, angry face. The mirror reflects this ugly image just as perfectly, without any aversion, without judging it or pushing it away. Then, you hold a raging fire before the mirror. It reflects the searing heat and the dancing flames with absolute fidelity. But is the mirror itself ever burned by the fire? Is it ever stained by the ugly face? Or made more beautiful by the lovely one, number? The mirror remains, in its essential nature, completely unstained, unscratched, and untouched by whatever it reflects. When all the images are gone, the mirror is just as pristine and luminous as it was before. This mirror is our true nature, our silent, knowing awareness. The reflections are the endless stream of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Our lifelong error is that we forget we are the mirror, and we believe we are the reflections. We cling to the pleasant reflections and flee from the painful ones, creating a life of constant struggle. The practice of recognition is the practice of remembering our identity as the mirror itself, the immaculate, ever-present witness that allows all of experience to arise and pass away without being changed by it. This shift in identity, from the fleeting, dramatic contents of the mind to the timeless, peaceful container of awareness itself, is the very heart of liberation. It is the key that unlocks the central promise of this spiritual path. That promise is that peace, or lack, is not something we must frantically search for in the outer world. It is not a prize to be won after a long and arduous struggle, nor is it a state to be achieved in some distant future. True and lasting peace is a reality to be unveiled. It is the simple, profound, and joyful recognition of what we have always been. It is a homecoming. We have now arrived at the very heart of our journey, the central pivot upon which the entire understanding of this path turns. Having looked beyond the finger to the moon, and having recognized our true nature as the vast, silent awareness in which all experience unfolds, we are ready to receive the deepest and most liberating truth. It is a truth that reframes our entire search for peace, turning it from a desperate outward quest into a gentle inward unfolding. The truth is this: peace, or lack, is not a destination to be reached, a prize to be won, or a state to be achieved. It is our fundamental nature, our default setting. It is a reality to be revealed, not acquired. For our entire lives, we operate under the flawed assumption that peace is something external, something we lack. We believe that if we can just add the right ingredient to our life, the right job, the right partner, the right amount of money, the right spiritual experience, then we will finally be peaceful. The path of wisdom reveals that this entire model is backwards. Peace is not an additive. It is what remains when we remove the obstructions. Imagine a perfectly clear, still pond. Its natural state is to be a flawless reflection of the sky. It is only when the winds of craving and aversion blow across its surface that it becomes agitated, murky, and turbulent. The stillness is not something you add to the pond. The stillness is its inherent nature. The practice is not to force the water to be still, but to create the conditions for the wind to cease. So it is with our minds. Our true nature is inherently peaceful. The stress, anxiety, and turmoil we experience are the winds of our own clinging and resistance. When we learn to let go, when we stop fighting with reality, the mind naturally, effortlessly, returns to its native state of quiet clarity. Let us use the metaphor of the sun and the clouds. The sun is a perfect symbol for our innate Buddha naturaliminess, warm, life-giving, and constantly radiant. It is always shining. It never turns off. The clouds are our conditioned thoughts, our emotional storms, our limiting beliefs, and the endless stories we tell ourselves. On a heavily overcast day, when the sky is a uniform blanket of gray, we might look up and believe that the sun has disappeared. We feel the chill, we live in the dim light, and we might even forget what the sun's warmth feels like. But high above that thick layer of clouds, the sun has not gone anywhere. It is still shining with the same magnificent, unwavering intensity. It has not been diminished in any way. It has only been temporarily obscured. Our spiritual practice, therefore, is not the work of creating a sun. That would be an impossible and absurd task. The practice is simply the work of allowing the clouds to part. When we practice mindfulness, we stop feeding the clouds with more and more stories. We stop giving them the energy of our belief. When we practice compassion, we stop struggling against the storms, instead allowing them to rain themselves out. As we cease to fuel our own obscurations, the clouds naturally begin to thin, gaps appear, and through those gaps, the light of the ever-present sun begins to shine through. The peace we experience is not a new creation. It is a revelation of the light that was always there, waiting patiently behind the veil. This understanding invites a profound shift in our orientation to life, a shift from a mode of becoming to a mode of being. Most of us live our lives in a constant state of becoming. We are always trying to become happier, become calmer, become more successful, become more enlightened. It is a future-oriented project of self-improvement, a belief that our current self is deficient and needs to be fixed or upgraded. This is the very engine of dissatisfaction. The revelation that peace is our inherent nature allows us to relax out of this frantic project. It invites us to let go of the exhausting struggle to become something different and to simply rest in the truth of what we already are. This does not mean we become complacent or that we cease to grow. It means that our actions are no longer fueled by a sense of lack. We can still learn, grow, and serve the world, but we do so not to attain peace, but from a place of peace. Our actions become a joyful expression of our true nature, rather than a desperate strategy to find it. Herein lies the great paradox of the spiritual search. The very act of seeking peace can be the primary obstacle to experiencing it. To seek for something implies that it is not here now. It implies that it is lost, that it is in some other place or some other time. This very assumption creates a subtle but persistent tension in the mind and body, a feeling of not having, which is the very opposite of peace. It is like a wave in the ocean frantically searching for water. The searching itself is the disturbance. The moment the wave stops searching and simply relaxes into its own nature, it realizes it is, and always has been, nothing but water. The moment we stop frantically searching for peace out there, we can begin to notice the quiet, ever-present peace that has been waiting in the background of our experience all along. A beautiful Buddhist parable tells of a very poor man who had a wealthy and compassionate friend. Seeing the poor man's miserable state, the friend wanted to help him. One night, while the poor man was asleep, the friend secretly sewed a priceless, wish-fulfilling jewel into the lining of his tattered coat. The next day, the two parted ways. The poor man, completely unaware of the immense treasure he was carrying, continued his life of struggle. For years, he wandered as a beggar, suffering from cold and hunger, overjoyed by the smallest handout, all the while carrying a source of inexhaustible wealth with him at every moment. Many years later, the wealthy friend encountered him again and was shocked to see him still in such a wretched condition. "My dear friend," he exclaimed, "why are you still living like this? All those years ago, I gave you a priceless jewel that could have ended all your suffering. It is sewn into your coat." The man, bewildered, reached inside his coat, felt the jewel, and pulled it out. He stared in stunned silence, realizing that he had been living the life of a pauper while possessing the fortune of a king all along. We are all this poor man. The priceless jewel is our own Buddha nature, our inherent, luminous, and peaceful awareness. The tattered coat is our body and mind. We wander through life seeking fulfillment in fleeting external pleasures, in the scraps of approval and success we can gather from the world, completely oblivious to the fact that the ultimate treasure is, and always has been, an intimate and inseparable part of our very own being. The spiritual path is not a journey to find a jewel. It is simply the process of listening to the friend who tells us where to look, and then having the courage to look inside our own coat. This is the great revelation. Peace is not a goal to be achieved. It is a home to be returned to. It is not something to be found. It is something to be unveiled. The entire spiritual journey is not about becoming someone new, but about finally, bravely, and joyfully accepting who we have been all along. This profound discovery that peace is our very nature can feel liberating, yet it can also raise a practical question. How do we live from this place of truth amidst the demands and routines of our everyday lives? How do we honor the sacred jewel while washing the dishes or sitting in traffic? This leads us to the art of embodied practice, the art of finding the monastery in the marketplace. The revelation that peace is our inherent nature, that the priceless jewel of enlightenment is already sewn into the fabric of our being, is the most liberating discovery one can make. It is a profound homecoming, yet it can also feel abstract, even distant, when we are faced with the immediate and undeniable realities of our daily lives. We might think, "It is wonderful to know I am the sky, but right now, I am sitting in traffic. It is inspiring to know I possess a jewel, but the dishes still need to be washed and the bills still need to be paid. We create a false dichotomy, a separation between our spiritual life and our real life, believing that peace can only be found by escaping the latter and retreating into the former. The Zen tradition shatters this illusion with a simple, powerful, and deeply practical teaching. There is no separation. The goal is not to escape your life, but to live it with a quality of attention so profound that the mundane itself reveals its sacredness. There is a famous Zen saying that encapsulates this entire philosophy. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. On the surface, this sounds anticlimactic, almost disappointing. We imagine that an enlightened being would be levitating, or perpetually blissful, or doing something far more glamorous than manual labor. But the teaching's depth lies in its simplicity. The external activities of life do not necessarily change. What changes, completely and irrevocably, is the quality of consciousness we bring to those activities. Before enlightenment, we chop wood, while our mind is lost in a fantasy of the future, dreaming of the day we will finally be peaceful and free from chores. We are filled with resentment for the task, a sense of striving, and a feeling that our real life is somewhere else. After enlightenment, we simply chop wood. Our mind is not in the past or the future. It is right here, with the experience. We feel the heft of the axe in our hands. We smell the sharp, clean scent of the pine wood. We hear the crisp crack as the log splits. We are so completely one with the action that the division between me and the chopping dissolves. The act itself becomes a moving meditation, a perfect expression of presence. The sacred is not found by running away from the woodpile. The sacred is discovered by entering into the act of chopping so fully that it becomes a gateway to the present moment. This is the practice of Zen in action. It is the art of bringing the stillness and clarity we cultivate on the meditation cushion into every corner of our lives. Consider the simple act of eating. Most of us eat on autopilot, our attention on a screen, a conversation, or the worries of the day. We barely taste our food. It is simply fuel to be consumed as quickly as possible. Mindful eating transforms this. It begins with seeing the food, truly seeing it, noticing its colors, its shapes, its textures. It involves reflecting for a moment on the miracle of its existence. The sun, the rain, the earth, the farmer, the truck driver, all the countless conditions that had to come together to bring this food to your plate. It is the practice of smelling the food, letting the aroma awaken your senses. And when you take a bite, you chew slowly, consciously, experiencing the multitude of flavors and the feeling of the food in your mouth. An everyday act is transformed from a mindless routine into a rich, sensory experience of gratitude and presence. Or consider the act of walking. We are always walking to somewhere, to the car, to the office, to the next appointment. Our body is walking, but our mind is already at the destination, planning and worrying. Mindful walking invites us to be present for the journey itself. Wherever you are, you can bring your attention to the physical sensation of your feet making contact with the ground. Feel the heel land, the weight roll through the sole, the toes push off. You can feel the subtle movements of your body, the feeling of the air on your skin. The purpose is not to get anywhere, but simply to be with the experience of walking. A frantic rush to the next moment becomes a peaceful, grounded dance with the present. This practice can consecrate even the most mundane and resented chores. Washing the dishes can become a meditation. Instead of complaining in your mind about the task, you can bring your full attention to the sensory experience. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the iridescent shimmer of the soap bubbles. Hear the gentle clinking of the plates. Feel the smooth, clean surface of a dish after you have rinsed it. The chore is no longer a burden. It is a precious 10 minutes of simple sensory reality, an anchor that pulls you out of the turbulent world of thought and into the calm harbor of the now. It is a common misconception that peace means inactivity, that to be enlightened is to be passive and disengaged from the world. The practice of Zen in action reveals the opposite to be true. It is the perfect union of stillness and movement. It is possible to be fully engaged in a demanding task, to be responding to challenges with skill and energy, while simultaneously maintaining an inner state of spaciousness and calm. The peace is not found in the absence of activity, but in the absence of mental friction and resistance during the activity. The outer world can be a storm of demands and deadlines, but your inner world can remain as calm and clear as the eye of the hurricane. This is why formal sitting meditation, the practice of just sitting and watching the breath, remains so important. It can be compared to an athlete going to the gym. A basketball player doesn't live at the gym, but they go there regularly to isolate and strengthen specific muscles, their legs, their core, their arms. They do this so that when they are in the middle of a fast-paced, chaotic game, their body is strong, balanced, and resilient enough to perform with grace under pressure. Our daily meditation practice is our spiritual gymnasium. It is where we go to specifically isolate and strengthen the muscle of our attention, our mindfulness. We train on the cushion so that when we are in the midst of the chaotic game of our daily life, our mind has the strength and stability to remain present, calm, and clear. The cushion is the training ground. Our life is the real performance. The wall we build between our sacred life and our secular life is an illusion, a construct of an inattentive mind. By bringing our full, embodied, non-judgmental presence to any action, we sanctify it. Chopping wood becomes meditation. Washing dishes becomes meditation. Listening deeply to another person becomes one of the most profound meditations of all. We come to understand that liberation is not found by arranging our life so that we can finally escape it. Liberation is found by living the life we have so fully, so attentively, so completely, that we discover the boundless peace that was always waiting for us, right here, in the heart of it all. This practice of infusing our daily actions with presence not only transforms our relationship with our tasks, it inevitably and profoundly transforms our relationship with other people. When we are truly present, we listen more deeply. When we are at peace within, we speak more kindly. Our interactions, especially the difficult ones, cease to be sources of irritation and become our most potent and valuable opportunities for practice. Having learned to find the sacred in the mundane, transforming everyday chores into acts of presence, we now turn our attention to the most dynamic, challenging, and rewarding field of practice we will ever encounter: our relationships with other people. If washing a dish can be a meditation, then navigating a disagreement with a loved one, or listening to a friend in pain, or dealing with a difficult colleague can be our advanced course. It is in the mirror of our interactions with others that our practice is truly tested. It is where we see, with unflinching clarity, where our attachments lie, where our judgments are sharpest, and where our compassion is most needed. Our relationships are not a distraction from the spiritual path. They are the path itself in its most potent form. We often believe that our spiritual progress depends on surrounding ourselves with peaceful, easygoing people, and that difficult individuals are obstacles to our tranquility. The Zen perspective turns this idea on its head. The people in our lives who most easily push our buttons are not our tormentors. They are our most valuable teachers. They are showing us, free of charge, exactly where our work lies. The button they push, after all, is our button. It is a button of our own insecurity, our own clinging to a particular view, our own need for control, or our own unhealed wounds. When someone's words or actions trigger a strong reaction of anger or defensiveness in us, it is as if they are holding up a perfect mirror, reflecting back to us the parts of ourselves that are not yet free. Instead of blaming the mirror for the reflection, this practice invites us to look deeply into it, and perhaps even to thank the person, silently in our hearts, for providing us with this precious opportunity for self-awareness. The foundation of transforming our relationships into a practice is the cultivation of deep, compassionate listening. In most of our conversations, we are not truly listening. We are engaged in what can be called reloading. While the other person is speaking, we are busy in our own minds, formulating our rebuttal, preparing our advice, or waiting for a gap so we can share our own, more interesting story. Our so-called listening is just a pause while we prepare our next volley. Deep listening is the opposite. It is the practice of setting aside our own agenda completely and offering another person the rare and beautiful gift of our full, undivided presence. We listen not just to their words, but to the spaces between the words. We listen for the feeling, the pain, the joy, or the unspoken need that lies beneath the surface of what they are saying. This kind of listening has a profound healing power. It communicates to another person, far more powerfully than any words could, that they matter, that their experience is valid, and that they are not alone. It requires us to be comfortable with silence, and to let go of our ego's constant need to be the one who has the answer. The other side of this practice is loving speech, which is the application of right speech from the Eightfold Path. It is the art of expressing ourselves in a way that promotes connection and healing, rather than separation and hurt. This means speaking truthfully, but always wrapping our truth in the blanket of kindness. It is understanding that the way something is said is often more important than what is said. It is the practice of pausing when we feel anger rising, recognizing that words spoken in the heat of rage are almost always destructive. It is the commitment to refrain from gossip and slanderous talk that poisons our own mind and creates division in our community. Before we speak, we can ask ourselves 3 simple questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If it does not pass through these 3 gates, it is often better to remain in the sanctuary of noble silence. At its deepest level, relationship as a practice calls on us to look beyond a person's surface behavior and to see the truth of their being. Our habit is to define people by their actions, especially their most difficult ones. We see their anger, their arrogance, their fear, and we mistake this for who they are. We mistake the cloud for the sky. This practice challenges us to remember that, just like us, another person's unskillful actions are almost always driven by their own underlying suffering, their own dukkha. A person who acts with hatred is a person who is living in the agony of a hateful mind. A person who is consumed by arrogance is often hiding a deep and painful insecurity. When we can see this, our perspective shifts from condemnation to compassion. This does not mean we condone or permit harmful behavior. We can still set firm, clear boundaries to protect ourselves, but we can do so from a place of understanding, not hatred. We can respond to the suffering human being in front of us, not just to their problematic behavior. We learn to see their inherent Buddha nature, their potential for goodness and light. Even when it is completely obscured by the clouds of their affliction, there is a powerful story in the Lotus Sutra of a bodhisattva named Siddhaparibhuta, whose name means never disparaging. His spiritual practice was unique and radical. He would approach every single person he met, from the most respected monk to the lowliest outcast, and he would bow to them deeply, with his hands joined in respect, and say, "I dare not hold you in contempt, for you are all walking the path, and you will all one day become Buddhas." Many people were bewildered by this. Others were enraged. They saw him as a fool who was mocking them. They cursed at him, threw stones and dirt at him, and even beat him with sticks. But Siddhaparibhuta never faltered in his practice. Even as he was running away to avoid their blows, he would turn back from a safe distance, bow again, and call out his unwavering refrain, "I still dare not hold you in contempt, for you will all become Buddhas." He was not reacting to their present, conditioned behavior, their anger, their ignorance, their violence. He was seeing beyond it. He was seeing their ultimate nature, their highest potential, their future Buddhahood. His practice was a radical commitment to seeing the jewel in everyone's coat, no matter how tattered and dirty the coat might be. This is the invitation for us in our own lives. Our relationships are our primary training ground. Every interaction, every conversation, every disagreement is an opportunity. It is a chance to either fall back into our old, conditioned habits of reactivity, judgment, and blame, thereby creating more suffering for ourselves and others. Or it is a chance to respond with mindfulness, with deep listening, with loving speech, and with the compassionate intention to see the Buddha nature in the person before us. When we begin to practice in this way, seeing our relationships as a sacred mirror, our entire worldview begins to transform. The rigid, black and white categories we once used to navigate the world, good and bad, right and wrong, success and failure, happiness and suffering, start to become more fluid and transparent. We begin to suspect that these opposites are not warring enemies, but intimate partners in a mysterious and beautiful dance. This leads us to a profound insight about the very nature of difficulty itself. As we deepen our practice of seeing the inherent Buddha nature in others, even in those we find most difficult, a profound alchemy begins to work on our own minds. Our rigid categories of good and bad, friend and enemy, sacred and profane, start to soften and dissolve. We begin to suspect that the world is not as black and white as we once believed. This leads us to one of the most sublime and challenging insights of the Zen path, the wisdom that transcends all opposites. It is the wisdom of the lotus flower. The lotus is a universal symbol of purity, beauty, and spiritual awakening. It emerges from the water, its petals unstained, its form perfect and luminous. It is the very image of transcendence. But the most important question we can ask about the lotus is this: where does it grow? A lotus does not grow in a pristine, sterilized environment. It does not sprout from a crystal vase or a manicured garden. The lotus flower takes root and grows only in the thick, dark, murky mud of a stagnant pond. The profound teaching, the very heart of this wisdom, is a simple, four-word truth: no mud, no lotus. The mud is our dukkha. It is our suffering, our confusion, our grief, our anger, our failures, our messy, complicated human lives. The lotus is awakening, compassion, wisdom, and peace. For most of our lives, we operate under the belief that we must first get rid of all our mud before we can hope to find the lotus. We believe we must eliminate our anger, conquer our fear, and perfect ourselves before we can be at peace. The teaching of the lotus reveals that this is a fundamental misunderstanding. The mud is not an obstacle to the lotus. It is the essential condition for it. The dark, smelly, nutrient-rich mud is the very compost out of which the pure, beautiful flower grows. Our greatest suffering can become the soil for our deepest compassion. Our most painful mistakes can become the seeds of our most profound wisdom. Our vulnerability is not a weakness. It is the fertile ground of our connection to all beings. To try and have a lotus without the mud is to wish for an illusion. This is why the desperate attempt to avoid suffering is, itself, a primary form of suffering. We spend so much of our energy trying to bubble wrap our lives, seeking only pleasant experiences, pleasant people, and pleasant feelings. We try to create a sterile, mud-free existence. But this is an impossible, exhausting task that creates a constant state of low-grade anxiety and vigilance. True freedom is not found in a life without mud. True freedom is the ability to stand in the middle of the muddy pond, to feel its texture and its pull, and to know that this is the very place from which our lotus will grow. The path is not about learning to avoid suffering. It is about learning how to transform it. This insight leads to a radical reinterpretation of our entire spiritual cosmology. In traditional Buddhism, we speak of two realms, samsara and nirvana. Samsara is the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, a cycle characterized by dissatisfaction and suffering. It is our ordinary, confused, day-to-day existence. It is the muddy pond. Nirvana is the cessation of suffering, the state of liberation, freedom, and peace. It is the lotus flower. Our dualistic minds immediately place these two realms in opposition. We think we are trapped here in the muck of samsara, and our goal is to undertake a long, arduous journey to get over there to the pure land of nirvana. The great masters of the Zen and Mahayana traditions looked at this and smiled. They declared that this, too, is an illusion. Samsara and nirvana, they taught, are not two different places. They are not two different realities. The ultimate view is that samsara is nirvana, the muddy pond is the lotus. The difference is not in the world, but in our perception of the world. When our mind is clouded by the three poisons of greed, hatred, and ignorance, we experience this very life as a place of suffering. As samsara, when the mind is purified of these poisons, when it is clear, spacious, and compassionate, we experience this very same life with all its messiness, its beauty, its pain, and its joy as the sacred realm of nirvana. Imagine you are in a darkened room and you see what appears to be a venomous snake coiled in the corner. Your heart pounds, your body tenses, you are filled with terror. This is the experience of samsara. Then a friend comes in and simply turns on a light. In the illumination, you see clearly that it was not a snake at all. It was merely a coiled piece of rope. The object itself never changed. Only your seeing of it changed. With the light of wisdom, the terror of samsara is instantly transformed into the mundane reality of the rope, which is nirvana, or freedom from that specific illusion. Liberation, therefore, is not an escape from this life. It is the complete transformation of the consciousness that experiences this life. This is the ultimate peace, a peace that transcends opposites. The conditional happiness we usually seek is a fragile peace. It is the peace that depends on everything going our way, on being healthy, on being liked, on being successful. It is a peace that is constantly threatened by the inevitable mud of life. The unshakable peace of an lack that we cultivate on this path is a peace that can hold both sides of the equation. It is the equanimity that can feel the joy of success without clinging, and the pain of loss without despair. It is the spacious heart that has room for both the light and the shadow. It is the peace of the sky, which impartially holds both the brilliant sunshine and the dark storm clouds. It is the peace of the mirror, which reflects both the saint and the sinner without being stained. It is a peace that no longer depends on the ever-changing reflections, because it has found its home in its own nature as the mirror itself. To live this truth is to embrace the messy, beautiful, and often paradoxical nature of what it means to be a human being. It means understanding that your heart can be broken and full of love at the very same time. It means you can feel profound grief for a loss, while also feeling profound gratitude for what you had. It is the realization that your most difficult relationship can be your greatest teacher, and that your greatest strength can be born from your deepest vulnerability. It is the end of the inner war, the end of the need for life to be a certain way, and the beginning of a deep and abiding trust in the unfolding of reality just as it is. This profound embrace of all of life's opposites, this understanding that our greatest difficulties are the raw material for our awakening, leads us to the ultimate fruit of this entire path. When we are no longer at war with our own experience, when we have ceased our frantic attempts to escape our own life, what kind of freedom do we finally discover? It is not the freedom from life, but the freedom in life. This is the nature of true and final liberation. Our journey together began with a recognition of the quiet anxiety that pervades so much of modern life, a shared sense that in our relentless pursuit of happiness, we had somehow lost our way. We turned our gaze inward, discovering that the source of this unease was not in our external circumstances, but in the habits of our own minds. We then equipped ourselves with the timeless, practical tools of the Zen path, the clarity of mindfulness, and the warmth of compassion. This exploration led us to the most liberating truth of all, that the peace we were so desperately seeking was never truly lost. It is not something to be built or acquired, but our own original nature, the fundamental ground of our being, waiting patiently to be unveiled. This brings us to the heart of our message, the single truth that illuminates the entire path. Peace is not sought, but revealed. It is your birthright, an inheritance that has been waiting for you all along. It cannot be found in the pages of a book, in the silence of a retreat, or even in the words of a teacher, however wise. It is found in the simple, faithful rhythm of your own breath. It is the silent, background awareness that is listening to these words right now. The same awareness that has been with you your entire life, witnessing every thought, every feeling, every experience. The spiritual path, therefore, is not a project of building a new and better house for yourself. It is simply the journey of returning home. And so, we leave you with a sense of hope, clarity, and profound self-possession, because you have everything you need to begin this journey home, right now. The journey of 1,000 miles, as the ancient saying goes, begins with a single steep, or in our case, with a single mindful breath. We encourage you to start simply, to approach this practice not with ambition, but with a profound sense of patience and kindness toward yourself. For peace is not a distant future you must strive for. It is the ever-present capacity to be fully here for the simple, profound reality of your life. Right here, right now.